going on, guys? A bit of a busy weekend, seeing that it's almost been half a year since we uploaded one of these mega compilations of fun deck ideas. Here you guys go. I think it's nearly 3 hours, so if you needed something to fall asleep to or you needed some deck ideas, hope this provides some use for you guys. As always, if you're a steady watcher of the channel, you might have seen these videos already and these decks already, but normally these videos reach out to people beyond the channel a lot of the time. So we'll be back with our regular scheduled upload on Sunday, and enjoy the decks, guys. We're going to start things off with Nayali's Sun's Vanguard. Nayali is 2, a red and a white for a 3/3. Attacking tokens you control have double strike. Whenever one or more tokens you control attacks a player, exile the top card of your library. During any turn you attacked with a token, you may play that card. I know, Boros right off the bat, an inoffensive thumbnail. We've completely turned a new leaf, guys. And as you can see by the theme stats over on EDH Rec, this deck is exclusively ran as a token deck. There's almost no comparison, and obviously it gives all your tokens double strike. So you might ask, Nick, how are you gonna make this any more unique? So with this deck, you're usually going for stuff like Krenko and Neem Pakal to flood the board with tokens, buff those tokens with stuff like Harmonious Archon or Intangible Virtue, use Nayali's double strike ability to end games quickly and aggressively while netting some exiled cards to potentially play and get more tokens. Really good token strategy, I'm not gonna lie. But let your dude get his hands on this, see what we can do here. Because like I said, after the thumbnail fiasco, I'm a whole new guy. I had to ask myself some questions, I had to reflect and figure out some deep truths about myself, and I came to the conclusion that Boros looks kind of fun now. What are we talking about? My version of this list runs powerful mid to late game creatures with potent combat damage triggers like Battle Angels of Tyr, providing a powerful balancing effect when it deals combat damage to a player, or creatures like Cavern Horde Dragon, which will create a ton of treasures on our side, equal to the amount of artifacts the opponent controls whenever it does combat damage. Pair these powerful creatures with effects that can make token copies of creatures we control, like Heat Shimmer or Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker, to make copies of these powerful creatures. And thanks to our commander and the fact that these copies are tokens, these tokens will have double strike. Are you putting it together here? And since these token copies have powerful combat damage triggers and they now have double strike, we can potentially be getting 3 triggers off of these combat damage creatures, 2 from the double strike token connecting and 1 from the OG one connecting. Pair all this with exile synergy like Passionate Archaeologist, turning cards cast from exile into damage, or Nelfenchi, copying spells we cast from exile, turning permanents we cast from exile into tokens. That'll be good. And I hate to say it, I think this is better than just a straight up token deck with this girl. As with all the decks we're going to talk about today, if you have any suggestions for these deck concepts, please drop a comment because, like I said, they're concepts. So if you guys could help me flesh them out, that's awesome. Deck concept number 2, baby. This one's based around Ishin 2 Heavens is 1. Ishin is a red, a white, and a black for a 3/4. If a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Combat damage powerhouse. I can hear you asking again, Nick, how are you going to make this very unique? Well, the 3 ways this thing is normally ran. First, aggro. You're going to run a ton of cards like Krenko Tin Street Kingpin, Sky Knight Vanguard, get tons of early game aggressive combat triggers, double them with Ishin, flood the board, do a bunch of damage. Good. People also go Samurai Tribal, which I think is really cool. You can run like Ryu to get extra combats, or Yamazaki to get artifact recursion, but again, kind of just cool theme-wise. It doesn't seem that strong. Sure, you have access to like Coat of Arms and Banner Kinship, but like, whatever. The third way people build this thing is equipments, because a lot of equipments have combat triggers, so stuff like Sword of the Animist providing ramp, or Sigil of Valor giving a huge attack buff as long as the creature attacks alone, and then you can double that attack buff trigger with Ishin. These are all really cool concepts, but I'm cooler. My Ishin list is based around being a total bitch, and I mean a total bitch. I'm gonna show you how defense can be the best offense here. What if Ishin was a Pillow Fort commander? I hear you asking, Nick, Ghostly Prison isn't an attack trigger. Gotcha, buddy. Cascoon Falls isn't an attack trigger, buddy. Sorry, time to shut down your whole idea, Nick. Hold on. Let me explain something to you. Ishin doubles the attack triggers of a permanent as long as attacking made that trigger. It doesn't matter if you attacking made that trigger. So yeah, you're right, Ghostly Prison doesn't work, but what about Breen the Demi-Gauge? Whenever a player attacks one of your opponents, if that opponent has more life than another opponent, that attacking player draws a card, and you put 2 1/1 counters on a creature you control. Yes, with Ishin, this will trigger twice because an opponent attacking another one of your opponents caused one of your permanents to trigger. That's all Ishin's looking for. So that player is going to go ahead and draw 2 cards. You're going to put 4 1/1 counters among creatures you control. That's a bunch of buffs for just any opponent swinging at another opponent. Yikes. Still not sold. That's fine. What about cards like Hissing Miasma? Whenever a creature attacks you, that creature's controller loses 1 life. And with Ishin, that triggers twice. So every time a creature attacks us, they will lose 2 life. I don't think we're getting attacked. Going on a hunch here. I don't think the other token decks or aggro decks at the table are going to be coming at us. How about throwing a Curse of Opulence or a Shiny Impetus on an opponent's creature and go nuts, because those are also attack triggers, causing the auras, which we still control even though they're on an opponent's thing, to give us 2 treasures. So every time that creature attacks, we get 2 treasures, buddy. And I can keep going. Mangara, giving you more card draw when the opponent attacks us. Cunning Rhetoric, exiling 2 cards off the top when an opponent attacks us. There's just a bunch of cool-ass Pillow Fort cards that can go into this list that actually work with Ishin, and I'm sure there's a ton that I'm missing, so again, let me know. Hopefully we're 2 for 2 so far, and if we are, consider dropping a subscription. We're definitely going to be 3 for 3 with decks that you go, how are you possibly going to make that unique, and then go, hopefully. Our third deck concept is based around Chatterfang, the Squirrel General. Chatterfang is 2 and a green for a 3/3 Forest Walk. If 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus that many 1/1 green squirrel tokens are created instead. You can pay 1 black, sacrifice X squirrels. Target creature gets +X -X until end of turn. Not really the most difficult to guess where people went with this one. If you guess squirrels, you're actually wrong, weirdly enough. People went tokens with this thing. Squirrels is actually the 4th way this deck is ran. I guess you just get a bunch of squirrels anyway, but that just seems weird to me. But keep in mind, a bunch of token creators just make squirrels. You got stuff like Chitter Spitter, Deep Forest Hermit. So the deck is still very squirrely, as it were. The second most built strategy here is treasure tokens, because if you're making a bunch of treasures, you're also going to be making a bunch of squirrels, and then you can use those treasures to ramp out bigger endgame stuff to buff with your Chatterfang, or rush out more ways to make squirrels. And the third way this deck is ran is Aristocrat. You're just doing the same thing as the last 2 ways, except you're also running stuff like Blood Artist, so that you can sacrifice X squirrels with Chatterfang, trigger your Blood Artist to drain a bunch of people. Cool. Those are all really good. Where the hell are all the food decks? Like, you can scroll down the themes on Chatterfang, and food's like way down there. I think there's like 60 Chatterfang decks that are food decks, as opposed to thousands of Chatterfang decks that are token decks. That makes no sense at all. Yeah, my Chatterfang deck's a food deck. You're gonna make tons of food tokens with stuff like Paragon Took and Nuka-Cola Vending Machine, netting squirrels off all of them, and then pair this with food synergy like Hazel's Brewmaster, giving your food tokens activated abilities of creatures we exile from grave with it, yikes, or something like Savvy Hunter, turning food tokens into card draw. Plus, tons of squirrels actually care about foods. Camellia turns foods we sack into squirrel tokens, and Hazel of the Root Bloom being able to make copies of squirrels or our food tokens, putting in double duty. When I saw that the food theme wasn't in the top 4 ways that Chatterfang was ran, let alone, like, I think the top 10, that's nuts to me. I mean, like, look at the forage mechanic. It's like a squirrel mechanic based around exiling stuff out of your graveyard or sacrificing food tokens to get powerful effects. We're just not going to do that. We all thought, oh, the Chamelea's cool for foods, but like Chatterfang, he's more of a treasure guy. Chatter Mukbang, that's the new deck. Deck concept number 4. This deck concept is based around Gyruda, Doom of the Depths, which is a 4 and 2 Dimir hybrid 6/6. It's also got companion, so it can be your deck's companion as long as your whole deck has even mana values. We don't care about that. This is the commander of this deck. When Gyruda enters the battlefield, each player mills 4 cards. Put a creature card with an even mana value from among the milled cards into the battlefield under your control. So people normally run this deck clones. Even like the top 3 themes, it's all just stuffed full of clones, because that's the main thing you're trying to do with this deck normally. You play Gyruda, mill everybody, rip the strongest thing into play under your control that has an even mana cost, drop a clone to copy Gyruda. That clone does the same thing. You cheat another big thing into play, you go ahead and sack the clone to the legend rule, and there's a lot of like cheap clone effects. You've got Phantasmal Image, the blue one that's a land, that's like a 3-drop that copies something. There's tons of cheap ways to clone Gyruda and just get a really powerful effect for like 2-3 mana, which, listen, as a reanimation player, love that. That's great, but it's also exactly what everybody does with the deck. That's not really the point of the video. So hear me out here. All right, what if we made Gyruda a little less scary for the board? All right, what if we ran Gyruda as a group hug deck? Hear me out. We get the classic group hug cards. We got Temple Bell, we got Howling Mine, we're helping the table. The table loves us, dude. We utilize the clone effects and Commander ETB to steal a ton of opponents' creatures out of grave. I know what you're saying, that's the same thing we were just talking about, hold on. But then we use blink effects like Conjurer's Closet or Displacer Kitten to blink the creatures we stole and return them to their rightful owners, dude. That's right, we're running a pet adoption agency out of our deck. We can also do the same thing with cards like Feign Death and Not Dead at All to return dying creatures that are opponents back into play under the opponent's control. all good. Now, this will keep you alive for most of the game because people love getting their creatures into play for free way earlier than they should. What do they love more than that? That happening over and over again for them. So you're probably going to stay alive till the end of the game. But then when it becomes a 1v1 situation, guess what you have? A normal Gyruda deck with tons of clone effects, and you just start doing that to the last opponent, stealing all their best stuff, hit them, and you go, yeah, sorry, looks like I won. This group hug's got a little edge to it, baby. If you've got any suggestions for the deck, again, please drop them in the comments. Links to all these decks down below. Let's move on to the next one. Deck concept number 5 is based around Strefin Moriner Progenitor? I hate this name. I hate this name! 2, a black and a red for a 3/2 flying. At the beginning of your end step, create a blood token for each player who lost life this turn. Whenever Strefin attacks, you may sacrifice 2 blood tokens. If you do, you may put a vampire card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped, and attacking, it gains indestructible until end of turn. This one is exactly as straightforward as it would appear. As opposed to some of the other concepts we've talked about so far, this is a normal Strefin deck. I've just plugged in stuff that no one else on other people's deck list online have seemed to plug in. We're doing the Strefin thing. We're running giant vampires like Markov Enforcer or Necropolis Regent to use Strefin to cheat them into play way earlier than they should hit play and get incredible value way earlier than we should. Now, what do other Strefin decks do? That's it. That's literally it. You run a couple of ways to make opponents lose life so that you can get blood tokens like a Blood Artist. Then you make blood tokens, and then you just cheat out the big vampires. That's like the play cycle in a normal Strefin deck. What if we ran fling cards? 2 mana to fling a potential Necropolis Regen is a 6/5 that makes itself bigger equal to the amount of damage it did. That could easily become a 12, 24, 48 power card pretty quickly. I think the idea of just flinging that much power at someone's face seems really strong. That's still not the end though. What if we also plugged in a reanimation kit into this deck? We run stuff like Ripples of Undeath to be milling big vampires into our graveyard, and then stuff like Dance of the Dead, Animate Dead to reanimate those vampires into play. So now, not only do we have vampires coming into play from our hand for very cheap, way earlier than they should, we've got vampires coming into play from our grave way earlier than they should. All the while, flinging those vampires once they get big enough at opponents for tons of damage, and having more reanimation to get them back to do it all again. I don't know, that felt different enough to bring it up. That's it. We won't talk about it anymore. We're done. All right, let's move to the next one. Whew, had to take a little break. It's day 2, Nick. Back with deck concept number 6. Let's get into it. Deck concept number 6 is based around Zamone Mystery Unraveler, which is 2 a green and a blue for a 3/3 landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, manifest Dread. To manifest Dread, you look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature, and the other into your graveyard. You may turn up a creature at any time for its mana cost. If this is the second time this landfall ability is activated, you may turn a permanent you control face up. So this deck falls under a category I like to call, y'all got tricked and hypnotized because you saw the word landfall and thought that's all the deck was allowed to do, and saw the word morph and thought that's the only other thing I'm possibly able to do with this deck. Both wrong. Y'all thinking small potatoes. My first thought when I read this card was, does that say permanent? So here's the thing. You read Manifest Dread, and you go, oh, if it's a creature, I can flip it over for its mana cost. So Zamone cheats out really big creatures. No, Zamone says if this is the second time this is resolved, you turn a permanent you control face up. Yeah, you can cheat any permanent into play. It doesn't have to be a creature. It has to be a creature if you want to pay the mana cost for it and flip it over, but we're not paying full price for shit in this deck. We're Simic. Let me set the table for how gross this could really be, okay? This is probably a pretty common occurrence in this deck, okay? Turn 1, we drop a forest, Landlore Elves, pass. Turn 2, we play our second land, drop a Dryad of Elysian Grove. Turn 3, we play a land along with Zamone, playing an additional land from Dryad, manifesting Dread into a, let's say, Omniscience. Fill in the blank with any giant enchantment, because the concept is you're gonna run a bunch of them. And you have set yourself up for a turn 4 Omniscience for free, which will then chain into you playing all of your big enchantments out of your hand for free. You can do this with so many big enchantments. Do you want to turn 4 Sandworm Convergence and start making 5/5s and turn off attacking for flyers? What about a turn 4 Decree of Silence to make the next spells people cast countered? Yeah. What about a turn 4 Extravagant Replication to give you a token copy of another non-land permanent you control at the beginning of your upkeep, and then pair that with the Shadow of the Second Sun to give yourself an additional upkeep? Ew. Pair this all with some enchantment interaction, like Kaleif, Beloved by the Sea, giving all of our enchantments a pseudo ward, or just something as simple as Sanctum Weaver, adding a bunch of mana equal to the number of enchantments we control, letting us just spam out more powerful cards. And then, of course, ways to play our 2 lands a turn so that we can actually manifest Dread and cheat giant things into play on the same turn. You can run cards like Oracle of Moldiah, Dryad of Elysian Grove. Oh, and this seems absolutely busted to me. Everyone online with this deck is like, hey, I'm gonna run a morph deck. I'm gonna run a big creature deck. I'm running a ramp deck. Doesn't have to be creatures, dude. You can cheat anything. If you have any suggestions for the list, let me know down below. Moving on to deck concept number 7. This deck concept is based around Ultima Origin of Oblivion, who is 5 colorless for a 4/4 flying. When it attacks, put a blight counter on target land. For as long as that land has a blight counter on it, it loses all land types and abilities and has tap for 1 waste. Whenever you tap a land for waste, add an additional waste. So what does everybody do with this? Yeah, I'm gonna run the Tron lands. I'm gonna just ramp a bunch because Ultima makes all my waste lands tap for an additional waste. We're gonna use all this additional ramp that we get for pretty much free built into our commander to play big Eldrazi's, play Blightsteel Colossuses. It's a colorless deck where we play big stuff. It's totally different than every other colorless deck that exists. No, it's not. It's actually not. So what I did was thought, what if we made a deck with nothing but lands in it? This is easily the weirdest deck concept on the video. I'll admit it. First off, it started as a gimmick, but now it seems like it actually might not only work, but be good. First off, we run man lands like Inkmoth Nexus, Cactus Preserve that we can animate into creatures. They could become potential blockers. They could become potential attackers, which in a lands only deck, super useful. Also, keep in mind, all of these lands produce waste, so they will produce an additional waste thanks to our commander, making the actual animation of some of our lands that can turn into creatures much easier to actually do. The cool part here is we actually have access to everything we need. Do you need card draw? War Room and Fountain Port have your back. Need removal? Ominous Cemetery and Underdark Rift got it covered. Need ramp? Our commander is built in extreme ramp, so we really don't need ramp, actually. And we run nothing but lands, so no, we don't need ramp. Need win cons? What about a 1/1 Infect Flyer with Inkmoth Nexus, or a land that makes a 1/1 Toxic Might with Mirex? Maybe spam a bunch of your mana into a shit ton of 1/1 counters on Crawling Barrens, then use your Rogue's Passage to make that Crawling Barrens unblockable. Honestly, this deck has some cool ways to win, and with it only being lands, I might have to build it. We might have to bring this one to the shop. And with waste basic lands being a thing now, it 100% can be built. If you have any suggestions, especially on this one, please let your boy know. Deck concept number 8 is built around Vren the Relentless, and I know I can't stop talking about this commander. I think he's very, very, very good, and there's just tons of cool stuff you can do with him. Now, Vren is normally ran one of 2 ways. He's either a rat tribal deck running stuff like Piper of the Swarm to make rats and gain control of opponents' creatures, and cards like Maronar to, again, make a ton of rats. The deck can also be played as a sacrifice deck, running stuff like a Curse Marauder and Shieldred's Edicts to get each opponent to sack creatures. Then we net 3 rats each turn from opponents sacking creatures. Pair this with some death triggers like Blood Artist and sack outlets like Ashnod's Altar and the amount of rats Vren can make. And yeah, it's a really strong deck. You can go a bunch of different routes for it. Surprisingly, not to me, you can go even more routes with this. My take on this deck, something a little bit more global. First off, I would absolutely pack the deck full of board wipes that destroy. Now I can hear you saying, Nick, if you wipe the board, sure, all the opponent's creatures get exiled, but Vren also dies. That's why we run ways to regenerate Vren, like Blessing of Leeches and Strands of Undeath, to provide him a reoccurring way to regenerate him. The deck also runs cards like Feign Death, Undying Malice, so when you board wipe, you drop one of those on Vren, Vren comes back. Either way, regenerating or Feign Death triggers, you just wiped 3 opponents' boards worth of creatures and Vren stuck on the board. So you're going to have a ludicrous amount of rats. And seeing that those rats get 1/1 for each other rat, I think like 1 board wipe, you're pretty good, Chief. You could bring home the game right there. And on top of all this, you run stuff like Patchwork Banner, Banner of Kinship to interact with all your rats. Boo, this deck is really a pain, honestly. Plus, Vren has Ward too, so it's like, hey, if you want to get rid of the deck's whole thing, you're gonna have to work for it. Plus, I have counter spells because I run blue, and plus I run Feign Death triggers. Not bad. I would even be tempted to say good. I would even be tempted to say very good. Let's move on to deck number 9, baby. We're drawing this video to a close, but the excitement has not stopped a bit. Deck 9's concept is based around Essex Fractal Bloom. Essex is 4, a green, and a blue for a 4/4 flying. The first time you would create 1 or more tokens during each of your turns, you may instead choose a creature other than Essex and create that many tokens that are a copy of that creature. Oh god, every time I read this card, I have to reread it like 3 or 4 times because it's that busted. It really is that busted. Now, the normal way you build this has 2 main flavors. You can run the token version where you flood the board with tokens with stuff like Avenger of Zendikar, then use Essex to target Avenger of Zendikar. So then let's say you made 6 0/1 plant tokens with your Avenger. No, you made 6 0/1 Avengers with your Avenger, and then each of those 6 just entered and made 6 more. So 36 tokens plus 6 Avengers Zendikars. I know I'm supposed to sell you on my idea of the deck, but Essex is just cool. You can also run a deck where the whole thing is you're like copying and stealing other people's creatures, so you run tons of clone effects like Rite of Replication along with Essex to start copying opponents' creatures and then getting more and more of them by making tokens on your side. Also, very cool. Essex is just a cool-ass commander. But I hate to say it, I hate to ring my own bell, I hate to keep coming back to this well, I hate to be a broken record, but I can do it better. I guarantee it. My version of this list was heavily inspired by Rizzo's recent Friday night deck submission of his Derevi Snowbirds tribal. Snowbirds. I thought plugging in the bird tribal thing to Essex would actually be very cool because a lot of the bird tribal stuff cares about things having flying. Essex has flying. There's a lot of bird tribal stuff that makes tokens. Essex cares about tokens. First thing I thought was some classic bird tribal stuff. Tawnos the Toy Maker gives us a token copy of a bird we cast. Or bird synergy like Radagast that provides our birds with protection while making bird tokens when we cast large spells. Again, going to interact good with Essex. Both of these are legendary, so you can't target these with Essex to make your tokens copies of it, but we'll get into that. You know what else is gonna bang here? Flying synergy. Stuff like Tide Skimmer, giving us a card draw when we attack with 2 or more flyers, or Sprite Noble that provides a defensive buff to flyers, or can tap to give all of our flyers +1/+0 until end of turn. Now we're really getting somewhere. Now we can pair this with cards that provide us with a large amount of tokens, like the aforementioned Avenger of Zendikar, and we can do some really gnarly stuff. Let's say, again, we have Avenger enter the battlefield and create 6 0/1s. We can now have all those 0/1s become a copy of Tide Skimmer, and we have 7 Tide Skimmers in play, all of which drawing us a card when 2 or more flyers attack. We're going to be drawing 7 cards every time we attack now from this point on, and we have 7, 2, 3 flyers. Then next time we have a bunch of tokens enter with something like, let's say, Awaken the Woods. We create 5 1/1 forest tokens. We can have them all enter as Sprite Noble this time, and we have 6 Sprite Nobles that can all give all of our flyers +0/+6 passively, and tap to give our flyers +6/+0 when they attack. All of this seems like, am I crazy? Pretty good. But this deck concept is incredibly loose, so if you guys have some suggestions for this one, drop them down below. And finally, the 10th and final deck of today's video. It's the one that you saw on the thumbnail. It's the one that made probably all you guys that aren't subscribed click on the video. By the way, subscribe if you aren't. The 10th and final deck concept of today's video is based around Y'shtola, Knights Blessed. Y'shtola is 1 a white, a blue, and a black for a 2/4 vigilance. At the beginning of each end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, you draw a card. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 2 or greater, Y'shtola does 2 damage to each opponent, and you gain 2 life. One of the most popular commanders right now. I see comments all over the Magic community's videos talking about Y'shtola. You should talk about Y'shtola, talk about Y'shtola, talk about Y'shtola. So I was like, let me see if I can come up with something creative for this video to fit Y'shtola in here, and I think we did, boys. Now, the way Y'shtola is normally ran, with a powerful card draw engine and group slug ability in Esper colors, the way this girl's normally ran is control. She's just built for it. You play Y'shtola, you run a ton of 3-drop counter spells, and you just counter. Nope, I'm gonna counter. Nope, I'm gonna counter. Nope, I'm gonna counter. Countering that, actually. Nope, that's not gonna resolve counter. Oh, and look at that. If you play a non-creature spell that costs 3 or more, each opponent loses 2. So yeah, you just control the game as hard as you can. Board wipes, counter spells, removal, all that stuff. Draining the opponents all the while controlling them, and once they get down low enough, you can just drain them to finish off the game, or you can play like a big Hullbreaker Horror, big control type creature late game to bring home these games. People also go spell slinger with this deck. What that means is they run Professor Onyx. I really don't see much of a difference between those 2 lists. They're very similar. With the third way being life gain, I was like, Y'shtola, you're the most popular commander. Could you do coolest stuff? So here's what I'm thinking. Y'shtola rewards us for playing non-creature spells with mana value 3 or greater, right? And for some reason, everyone read that and went, oh, instants and sorceries. That's what that means. Much like the Zamone deck, there's other stuff. You know that, right? There's artifacts. There's other stuff. Specifically artifacts, because we're an Esper. This seems like a no-brainer to me. My version of this deck runs artifacts that punish opponents for making game actions with damage. So cards like Dingus Egg deal 2 damage to a player when a land that player controls goes to grave, or a card like Magnetic Mire does the same thing with artifacts. We also run artifacts that can just provide ping, like Staff of Nin or Acorn Catapult, all of this to trigger Y'shtola's card draw while also whittling down opponents, and all costing more than 3 mana, so they will also drain opponents cards when we play them. The deck also just runs artifact synergies like Ethereum Sculptor to reduce the cost, Mystic Forge to let us play artifacts off top, utilizing powerful game-ending artifact cards like Urza Lord High Artificer or Lux Artillery to help us bring home games. This deck leans really heavy into the slow burn aspect of Y'shtola, opting to run tons of artifacts that punish opponents with damage, all of which taps into her card draw and her drain phenomenally, all being in Esper colors, which is perfect for an artifact deck. I was genuinely shocked that artifact was not a theme that people run her as. Agatha of the Vile Cauldron, who's a red and a green for a 1/1. Activated abilities of creatures you control cost X less to activate, where X is Agatha of the Vile Cauldron's power. This effect can't reduce the mana cost below 1 mana. She's also got pay 4, a green and a red. Other creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample and haste until end of turn. So if you turn her into a 4/4 with buffs, her second ability will only cost a red and a green, and the same applies to any creatures we have with activated abilities. So, remember what we said earlier, class? What's more fun than making a good thing great? Making something that's normally unplayable good. That's my sauce. So with this deck, I went Monstrosity. And if you don't recall that mechanic, I don't blame you. The deck runs a total of 15 Monstrosity cards, starting with Arbor Colossus being 2 and 3 green for a 6/6 with reach. You can pay 3 and 3 green, Monstrosity 3, meaning if there are no counters on it, you put 3 1/1 counters on it and it becomes monstrous. When Arbor Colossus becomes monstrous, destroy target creature with flying and opponent controls. Now if we can turn Agatha into a 3/3, this is 3 green to turn this into a 9/9 that blows up a flyer, which actually, you will take that. Clay Golem is a 4-drop 4/4 with 6, roll a d8, Monstrosity X, where X is the results. So if we turn Agatha into a 5/5, we can get this to be 1 mana, roll a d8, Monstrosity X. When it becomes monstrous, destroy a permanent. Yeah, that's way better than Meteor Golem. We'll take it. Colossus of Across is great, being an 8-drop 10/10 Defender Indestructible Monstrosity 10. If it's monstrous, it can attack and it has trample. So again, Agatha can make this cost 1 mana to get a 20/20 Indestructible Trample. Yeah, that seems fine. Death Kiss is great, being 5 and a red, 5/5. Whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks one of your opponents, double its power until end of turn. 2x and a red, Monstrosity X. When it becomes monstrous, goad X target creatures your opponents control, so incentivizes opponents attacking each other. Goad stuff. With Agatha, you can make this monstrosity absolutely filthy. Domesticated Hydra is a straightforward 4-drop 3/3 X and 3 green Monstrosity X that gains trample once it's monstrous. Giggling Skitter Spike is a 4-drop 1/1 indestructible. Whenever it attacks, blocks, or becomes the target of a spell, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. And it's got Monstrosity 5 for 5. So again, in Agatha, this is absolutely disgusting because we run a ton of targeted buff spells. So yeah, we can just target Giggling Skitter Spike with those and start shooting opponents. This is the win con in the deck. Definitely. Other than the giant monstrous creatures, of course. Hydra Broodmaster is great, being 4 and 2 green for a 7/7, 2x green Monstrosity X. When it becomes monstrous, create XXX green Hydras. That could get out of hand incredibly quickly. Incubation Druid has Adapt, which is pretty much monstrous. It's the only Adapt card that's worth running. At its base level, it's a 2-drop 0/2 that taps for mana, but as long as it's got 1/1 counters on it, it taps for 3 mana. So once it's monstrous, it'll help us a ton in this deck. Meister Seymour is really good. Hey, what's up, Meister Seymour? That was a good Toemater, dude. 2 and a green for a 1/3 at the beginning of combat on your turn. Put a 1/1 counter equal to Meister Seymour's power on another target creature you control. 3 and 2 green Monstrosity X, where X is the number of counters among creatures you control. Yeah, he is going to be gargantuan. And then after that, it's gonna go, hey, I'm gonna make all your other stuff huge. Polis Crusher is 2, a red and a green for a 4/4 trample, pro enchantments. 4, a green and a red, Monstrosity 3. When it deals combat damage to a player, if it's monstrous, destroy target enchantment that player controls. Pretty good. Like the hardest card type to get rid of on a stick. That's not bad. He's also missing his middle toe. I don't know why I brought that up, but here it is. I also never noticed this was a Cyclops. I always assumed it was a giant until I just read its creature type. It's really interesting. Pelucranos World Eater is the OG monstrosity creature, being 2 and 2 green, 5/5, double X green Monstrosity X. When Pelucranos World Eater becomes monstrous, it deals X damage divided among any number of creatures, and those creatures deal their damage back to Pelucranos. So yeah, you can do this however you want. You could dish this out to where it's wiping everything, but it also kills Pelucranos. You can just wipe out a couple of things and keep Pelucranos around. It's a really good monstrosity creature once you have a ton of mana, or Agatha's big enough, which it will be. Spitting Slime is 3 and 2 green for a 3/3. 4 and 2 green, Monstrosity 3. When Spitting Slime becomes monstrous, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of Spitting Slime. Yeah, and then that token also has monstrous, so Yeah, you just keep getting more spitting slimes. It's doing the slime thing. In this deck, it's going to cost 2 green most of the time. That's pretty bonkers. Stone Shock Giant, surprisingly, might be one of the win conditions in this deck, being 3 and 2 red for a 5/4, 6 and 2 red, monstrosity 3. When it becomes monstrous, creatures without flying your opponent's control can't block this turn. Yeah, that'll get damage through for sure. Storm Breath Dragon is 3 and 2 red for a 4/4, flying, haste, protection from white, 5 and 2 red, monstrosity 3. When this creature becomes monstrous, it deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of cards in that player's hand. This is a good time to bring up that monstrosity is not an at sorcery speed activated ability, so you can do this whenever. So you could just play this to prevent people from drawing a ton of cards and never have to actually activate it. Moving on to the final monstrosity card of the deck, Wildfire Cerberus is 4 and a red for a 4/3. 5 and 2 red, monstrosity 1. When it becomes monstrous, it does 2 damage to each opponent and each creature those opponents control. And with all of these small CMC, very annoying creatures Magic keeps making, and all the tokens that every strategy keeps producing now, this seems actually pretty good. So I hear you asking, it's nice to have monstrosity not cost anything, but the creatures that they're on cost a lot. That's why we run a ton of big mana cards. Dryad of Elysian Grove lets us play an additional land each turn. Goblin and Narcomancer lets our green and red spells cost 1 less. Gwenna, Eyes of Gaia taps for 2 mana. Incubation Druid, as we talked about, taps for 3 mana. Jessica's Will adds us a red for each card in our opponent's hand. Lotus Cobra produces a mana whenever we play a land, which in this deck can produce multiple. Oracle of Moldiah lets us play multiple lands. Shaman of the Forgotten Ways taps for 2 mana. Soul Ring taps for 2 mana. Somberwalled Sage taps for 3 mana. Thran Dynamo taps for 3 mana. And Worn Power Stone taps for 2. And then we also run Bugahagen. He's not a big mana, but he draws us a card for having 7 or greater, so he's in here. He's also a part of the ramp package. I deal with it. So we've got the mana to play the big creatures, to go monstrous with our Agatha, but how do we get our Agatha bigger? Well, I'm glad you asked. Blackblade Reforge being a 2 mana equipment that equips for 3 to legendary creatures and gives equipped creature 1/1 for each land. That's all we need. I'm not saying that's all we run, but if you have that on Agatha, you're set for the rest of the game. Blossoming Defense is a 1 green instant that gives target creature +2/+2 and hexproof, doubling as a way to make our activated abilities cost 3 less in a pinch or protect Agatha. Giant Growth is a classic 1 green, give +3/+3. That's going to be fantastic. Groundswell is one of my favorites. 1 green, instant, give +2/+2, but if you played a land, give +4/+4. Great card. Invigorate might be the best buff card in this deck, being 2 and a green. If you control a forest, rather than pay the spell's mana cost, you have target opponent gain 3, target creature gets +4/+4. So this is a free, instant speed. All your monstrosities cost 5 less to activate. Oh, okay. I did the little water drop thing by accident. Did you hear that? I can't do it. I can't do it on purpose. I did it by accident. Replay that. Oh, that was sick. Overprotect, similar to Blossoming Defense, doubles as a buff spell and a form of protection, being 1 and a green, instant, +3/+3, trample, hexproof, indestructible. So yeah, we can use the +3/+3 trample if we want. We could use the hexproof indestructible if we want. Whatever we're feeling. Primal Bellow is disgusting in here. 1 green, instant, target creature gets 1/1 for each forest you control. Yeah, in a 2-color deck, this is going to be easily a 1 green, +4/+4, +5/+5. Yeah. And then finally, Vines of Vastwood. If you pay 1 green, it just protects something, but if you pay 2 green, it gives that thing +4/+4 as well. So again, protection or buff, because our commander is super important. We also run 4 ways to cheat the big creatures into play. We got Court of Bounty, which if we're the Monarch, lets us cheat creatures into play. Galta, who will cheat our whole hand's worth of creatures into play. Last March of the Ents, which can't be countered, draws us cards and then cheats a whole hand's worth of creatures into play. And Tooth and Nail, which can tutor us up 2 creature cards out of our deck and put them directly into play. All of which are, more good ways to get a bunch of these monstrosity creatures onto the battlefield, baby. Of course, with our commander and our creatures being so high risk, high reward, we run Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots to protect them. We also got a Heroic Intervention in here to protect the board. And yeah, on the screen you can see all the card draw, removal, board wipes that we didn't talk about in the video. If you want to get a more in-depth look at any of the decks we're going to talk about today, links to all 4 decks are going to be down below. And with that, let's move on to deck number 2. Deck number 2 is based around Imskir Iron Eater, which really wasn't as big of a hit as I thought this commander was going to be when it got released, but I think it's because we were on the wrong scent. These bloodhounds were sniffing up the wrong trail. But I've got good news. You know what Kanye said? You heard about the good news, and y'all sleeping on me, huh? Had a good snooze. So when Imskir first dropped, you read it, you go 6, a red, a black, 5/5, affinity for artifacts. When it enters the battlefield, you draw X cards and you lose X life, where X is half the number of artifacts you control rounded down. 3 in a red, sacrifice an artifact. Imscure deals damage equal to the sacrificed artifact's mana value to any target. So obviously you go, oh, you run a bunch of affinity for artifact cards so you can get them out quickly, and then fling them with Imscure for a lot more than you played them for. Isn't this an 8-drop 5/5 with affinity for artifacts that's in our command zone? Wouldn't it make more sense to fling you? First, we're gonna need to flood the board with artifact tokens to make sure that Imscure is the lowest mana cost we can possibly have him for most of the game. So with cards like Descent into Avernus, 2 in a red enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep, put 2 Descent counters on Descent into Avernus, each player creates 2 treasure tokens, then Descent into Avernus deals X damage to each player, where X is the number of counters on Descent into Avernus. This not only gives us treasure tokens, it also accelerates the game, which is going to be important once we talk about the next category. Glowing Dwarf Emissary is great, being 2 in a red for a 3/3 whenever we cast a historic spell, create a treasure token. This ability triggers only once a turn, and you can also tap it, sacrifice a treasure, goad target creature. Grim Hireling turns our combat damage into 2 treasure tokens. Olivia's Attendance turns her dealing damage into you making that many blood tokens, so if we can hit someone once with Olivia's, that's going to be doing work in this deck. Professional Facebreaker turns combat damage into treasure tokens. Prosper Tomebound just gives us a treasure token whenever we play a card from exile, as well as giving us a card from exile at the beginning of our end step. Rose Room Treasurer turns creatures ETBing on our side into treasure tokens, and every time this ability triggers past the second time, you just get to fireball any target for X. Very busted. And Underworld Cookbook lets us discard a card to create food tokens, as well as sacrifice itself to return a creature from our grave, which might be useful. And finally, Academy Manufacturer. Whenever we create a clue, a food, or a treasure, we get all 3. So in this deck, that's going to be fantastic. The next most important thing to know about this deck is it's a group slug deck. So we're going to deal damage to opponents for doing anything. Bloodseeker turns creature ETBs into opponent's drain. Creeping Bloodsucker just drains opponents at the beginning of our upkeep. Fate Unraveler turns draw into drain. Gleeful Arsonist turns non-creature spells into damage. Harsh Mentor turns activated abilities of artifacts, creatures, or lands into 2 damage. Cataract Parasite turns draw into damage. Rampaging Ferocitid turns creature ETBs on opponent's control into damage. Razorkin turns draw into damage. Roiling Vortex does damage at the beginning of our upkeep. Rug of Smothering turns any spell cast into 1 life lost. Scrawling Crawler turns draw into damage. Lord of Pain turns the first spell opponents cast into damage. Vial Smasher turns the first spell we cast into damage. And Xantcha lets anyone pay 3 mana to draw a card and have the owner of Xantcha lose 2 life, and you can give Xantcha to anybody. All of these are gonna whittle away at our opponents. Okay, so the game plan here. We play all these artifact token producers like Grim Hireling to reduce our Imscure Iron Eater's cost with his affinity for artifact spell. We pair this with group slug spells to be constantly pinging away at our opponent's life totals. And then finally, we pair this with the final kit of the deck, the Fling package. Fling being 1 in a red, instant, sack a creature. That creature deals damage equal to its power to any target. So while we're whittling away at all our opponent's life totals, they're quickly going to become at critical life. They're going to be within kill range pretty quickly. And then you can just drop Imscure for 2 mana, fling it at somebody. Imscure goes back to command zone, and if you've got enough artifact tokens, you just drop Imscure again for 2 mana, and then you fling it again with something like Soul's Fire and rinse and repeat. All the while having cards like Warstorm Surge in play. Whenever a creature ETBs, it does damage equal to its power to any target. Or Terror of the Peaks, which does the same thing. And you've got a group slug deck where you're using the commander as the last fireball to take out all the opponents, and I think that's really fucking cool. So if this Imscure Iron Eater Fling group slug affinity for artifacts list interests you, links are down below for all 4 of the decks we're going to talk about today. And with that, let's move on to deck number 3. I'm going to be honest, deck number 3 is incredibly fun, and I'm very excited about it, but it's also incredibly mean. It might be one of the grossest lists I've ever came up with. Deck number 3 is built around Ulalek Fused Atrocity, which is 4 waste or Wooburg for a 2/5, Devoid, which means it has no color. Whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, you may pay 2 waste. If you do, copy all spells you control, then copy all other activated and triggered abilities you control. You may choose new targets for the copies. Now stick with me. This is not an Eldrazi deck at all. Now, I did a little research, and apparently you guys are calling this kind of deck a Changeling Tribal deck or a Shapeshifters deck. Kinda dumb. Kinda lame, if I'm being honest. My deck's called a Tribal deck. Yeah, that's right, Tribe All. And here's the rundown. We run 18 Changeling creatures. Now, changelings are all creature types, which includes Eldrazi, okay? I really don't have to sit around and talk about these too much. Here's all of them on the screen. If you want to run them, you can check out the list. The important part here is nearly all of these cost 3 or less mana. So for 3 or less mana, we're going to be getting Ulalek triggers, being able to copy the changeling we just played, and then copy all triggered abilities we control as well. So the next question becomes, what kind of activated and triggered abilities are we talking? This is where this becomes one of the coolest lists I've ever made. I'm going to make a full video about this deck, way more in depth than this. But the basic rundown is, if you click on the Moxfield link for this deck and then click Enable Tags, you will see a Tribes tag. And there are 10 creatures in this tag, all of them being some kind of tribal-based creature. You can pick whichever 10 are your favorite, because your changelings are all of these tribes. Archmage of Echoes, 4 and a blue, for a 4/4. Flying, Ward 2, whenever you cast a fairy or wizard permanent, copy it. The spell becomes a token. So if you have Ulalek out, you have Archmage of Echoes out, and then you play a Taurine Mauler, you can have your Archmage of Echoes trigger go on the stack because your Taurine Mauler is technically a fairy or a wizard. Then pay 2 to have your Ulalek trigger go on the stack. Ulalek goes off, you copy all spells you control, so your Taurine Mauler, you get a copy of that. Then copy all other activated and triggered abilities you control, which is our Archmage of Echoes triggered ability. So we will make 2 tokens from Archmage of Echoes of Taurine Mauler, 1 token of Taurine Mauler for Ulalek, and then the OG Taurine Mauler. So we will have 4 Taurine Maulers in play for 3 mana. We just got that. Ayula, Queen Among Bears, 1 and a green, 2/2. Whenever another bear enters the battlefield under your control, choose 1. Put 2 1/1 counters on target bear. Target bear you control fights target creature you control. This just shows how good this is. This doesn't even interact with Ulalek's ability, and it's fantastic. We just get to play changelings for very cheap, make them huge, and then fight other people's stuff with them? Sure. Captivating Vampire is disgusting in this one, being 1 and 2 black, 2/2. Other vampires get +1/+1. Tap 5 untapped vampires you control. Gain control of target creature. It's a vampire in addition to its other types. So with Ulalek, we can cast a changeling spell for really cheap. In response to casting that, activate Captivating Vampire, then activate Ulalek, and Ulalek will copy our Captivating Vampire activation. Because it doesn't care if the thing it's copying is an Eldrazi, it just cares that the first thing you cast is an Eldrazi, which makes the changelings so good. Crystalline Sliver, a 2-drop that gives all slivers Shroud. Yeah, all of our changelings have Shroud. Sure. Balakdor, the Dark Master, 3, a black, a blue, and a red for a 6/5 flying. When it enters, you draw X, lose X, where X is the number of demons you control. Whenever another demon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. Again, all of our changelings become Warstorm Surges. Balakdor is going to draw us a ton of cards when it enters. Dromoka the Eternal, whenever a dragon attacks, bolster 2. Yeah, our changelings are going to get huge. Piper of the Swarm lets us turn our rats into gaining control of creatures. Singer of Swift Rivers lets us play merfolks with flash, so all of our changelings have flash now. Scarab God lets us scry and drain each opponent equal to the number of zombies we control. Again, changelings. And Valley Floodcaller lets us untap all of our bird, frog, otter, and rat creatures whenever we cast a non-creature spell. Yeah. But the best part here is put what 10 tribal cards you think will be good in here. Again, I'm going to make a full video on this, and we're going to go way more in depth on this deck as a community, but any comments about that could help for the future video. So here's a look at the card draw, the mana ramp, the removal, the board interaction that we didn't talk about in the video. Again, links to all 4 of these decks down below, and with that, let's move on to the 4th and final deck of the video. Our final deck of the video is based around Brago King Eternal, who is 2, a white and a blue for a 2/4, flying. Whenever Brago King Eternal deals combat damage to a player, exile any number of target non-land permanents you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. This guy's a classic. He's a very powerful blink deck. A lot of people run this dude. The basic strategy is you run ETB creatures, let's say Sun Titan. You swing with Brago, you get to blink that creature and as many other creatures that have ETBs as you want, and then milk those ETBs over and over again. You mind if I milk those ETBs, girl? Brago's extra cool though because it says non-land permanent, so you could reset stuff like Oblivion Ring to remove new present threats in the game, or just making really basic cards like Ichor Wellspring way better in a deck like this, just providing you guaranteed draw each turn you swing with Brago. But what I immediately thought? Sagas. The deck runs 28 sagas, because sagas sacrifice themselves once they get to the last chapter, but if you can blink the saga with Brago, you can just reset the full saga and then get everything up until the last chapter all over again. Now again, we run 28 sagas. Am I going to talk about all of these and read all of these? No, I'm going to show you some of the ones that'll give you a rough idea of how cool this deck can be, alright? Because we'll be here all day. Summon Good King Mog is actually disgusting in this deck. 4 and a white, 4/4. Chapter 1 puts 2 1/2 Moogles with lifelink into play. Chapter 2 and 3 give you, whenever you cast a non-creature spell this turn, create a token that's a copy of a non-saga token you control. Yeah, okay, so we just get more Moogles when we cast non-creature spells, sure. And then you could always let the final chapter go off to buff up all your Moogles, or you could just blink it and reset it and start making more and more and more and more and more, and then let it go off whenever you want once you have hundreds of these guys in play. Tamio meets the Story Circle is actually incredibly annoying, being 1 and a blue for a saga, chapter 1. Until your next turn, whenever a creature attacks you, it gets -2/-0 until end of turn. Chapter 2, discard any number of cards, then investigate twice for each card you discarded. That's actually, like, super good. Chapter 3, shuffle up to 3 target cards from your graveyard to your library. Don't even care about that one. We're going to be milking Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 incredibly hard, making it very difficult for any kind of go-wide deck to be swinging at us, while also investigating a ton. The Princess Takes Flight is just mean, being 2 and a white. Chapter 1, exile target creature. Chapter 2, target creature gets +2/+2 and gains flying. Chapter 3, return the exiled card to its owner's control. Yeah, we're never going to make it to Chapter 3, so we're just going to keep exiling and exiling and exiling and exiling, and you're never going to get it back. War Games is actually kind of disgusting. I want to see how this plays in this deck very badly. 2 and 2 white. Chapter 1, each player creates 3 tapped 1/1 white warrior creature tokens that are goaded for as long as you control the War Games. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 put a 1/1 counter on each warrior creature. And Chapter 4, you can exile target non-token creature you control and then exile all warriors. No, we're going to be fighting to the death over and over and over and over again, and everyone's getting a ton of creatures. How is that going to go for us? I'm not sure. It's going to be absolute chaos, and I want to see how it goes. Gadwick's first duel. Honestly, another unsuspecting one that seems very good. 1 and a blue, Chapter 1, put a cursed roll token on target creature, which makes it a 1/1. And Chapter 2 lets us scry 2. You can also like copy an instant or sorcery that costs 3 less with its final chapter. We're not going to use that. Being able to turn a ton of big things into 1/1s, that's going to be good. That's making another enchantment token. The cursed roll token is another enchantment. That'll play into this deck extremely well. And then scrying 2, setting up our draws over and over again, we'll definitely take that. And pile all of this on top of running Mirror Maid, which can enter as any enchantment. And this deck has so many cool sagas and things it can do, and it just milks them over and over and over. I'm gonna call this deck Brago's Milking Table. And of course, you've got like the giant endgame sagas like Summon Knights of the Round, an 8-drop 3/3 indestructible that creates 3 2/2 knights as its first, second, third, and fourth chapter. And its 5th buffs up your whole board. With Brago, you can just milk that first part as long as you want. It's probably just going to end the game on its own, though. A better example would be Kiora Best the Sea God being able to get recurring 8/8 Krakens over and over and over again that also have hexproof, and being able to tap all the opponent's stuff over and over and over and over again. That seems, I almost feel bad. I also run all that glitters in ethereal armor because having a flying commander when you're running this many enchantments, I felt like I had to. You know what I want? You know what I mean? Giving Brago 1/1 for each of our enchantments and artifacts? Yeah. Plus, they themselves are enchantments. It's gonna play into the deck. They seemed like a run to me. Here's a look at the mana ramp, removal, card draw, all the stuff we didn't talk about in the video. Lita Mechanical Engineer, which has 424 decks on EDH Rec. Lita Mechanical Engineer is 2 and a white for a 3/3 vigilance. At the beginning of your end step, untap each other artifact creature you control, pay 3 and a white, tapper, create a 5/5 colorless vehicle artifact token named Zeppelin with flying and crew 3. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a pretty unique commander and actually pretty strong. And for mono white, we will take both those things. I think it's grossly underplayed for how both of those things it is. Welcome to the video. This deck's gonna run vehicles like Aerial Surveyor, being a 2 and a white 3/4 flying that crews for 2. Whenever Aerial Surveyor attacks, if defending player controls more lands than you, search your library for a plains and put it into play tapped. Nautiloid Ship, a 4-drop 5/5 flying with crew 3. When it enters the battlefield, exile target player's graveyard, and when Nautiloid Ship deals combat damage to a player, you may put a creature card exiled with it into play. How about some big boys like the Parhelion 2, being a 6 and 2 white 5/5 flying first strike vigilance crew 4. When it attacks, create 2 4/4 angels with flying and vigilance that are attacking. Or the Pridewind Steel Flagship, being a 4 and 2 white 6/6 flying crew 2. Whenever another non-token artifact enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 white human knight creature token with. This creature gets +2/+2 as long as an artifact entered the battlefield this turn. And those little 2/2s that vehicle makes is a perfect segue into another package you're going to want to put into this deck, which I like to call the Pit Crew. These are going to be all your creatures or tokens that you make to help you crew your vehicles, because that's kind of a necessity. You can't just run vehicles because
not really a way to turn them on. So running stuff like Cloudspire Captain being a 2 and a white 2/3 that gives your mounts and vehicles +1/+1, and this creature saddles mounts and vehicles as though its power were 2 greater, makes a great option, along with cards like Hotshot Mechanic being a 1-drop 2/1 that crews as if its power were 2 greater, or cards like Wizened Mentor that create a 1/1 white zombie whenever an opponent activates an ability of a permanent that isn't a mana ability, which will give you a steady stream of just consistent 1/1s being made. You can use those 1/1s to crew your vehicles. All these are great options to make up your little pit crew here. Or as I would say when I was like 8 years old, you could be the next Dale Heartworm Jr. On top of the pit crew and the vehicles, we're going to be running some general artifact synergy because we're going to be playing a lot of artifacts. So stuff like Armed with Armor is insane in this deck. 1 and a white instant, turn all your vehicles into creatures. Then you can like choose a dwarf you control and attach a bunch of stuff to it. We don't care about that part. 1 and a white to turn all of our vehicles into creatures. This will win you games. Stuff like Shimmermere lets us play our artifacts at instant speed, and stuff like Sculpting Steel can enter as any artifact or vehicle that we have on our side of the board that we may need in a pinch. There's a ton of sick mono white stuff you can run in like an artifact vehicle deck, come to find out. I do have like mock-up rough draft versions of all the decks we're going to talk about today down in the Moxfield list if you want to look at those and get some ideas. If you've got any ideas for this list or any of the lists we're going to talk about today, drop them down in the comments. And with that, let's move on to the second underplayed commander. Underplayed commander number 2 is Xava Rakdos Blood Witch with 416 decks. Xava is 2, a black and a red for a 3/3 first strike haste unleash, so you can have it enter with a 1/1 counter. If you do, it cannot block, and each other creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it has haste. I get this one, why it's kind of underran. There's been a ton of like cool, I think specifically Rakdos, Gruul, or Jund commanders that kind of interact with this same ballpark of giving stuff haste, being very aggressive. I think she does offer a unique-ish ability of giving all your creatures with a 1/1 counter on them haste, which works really well with some mechanics that have been printed since this card was printed, which I think makes this a way better deck than it was or had been for many years, so it might have gotten pushed into the aisles of history. But I have brought it back. So creatures that ETB and just have counters on them are gonna be very, very strong, and who would have guessed it? Giving them haste interacts really, really powerfully with a lot of these. Bloatfly Swarm is 3 and a black for a 0/0, enters with 5 1/1 counters on it. If damage would be dealt to Bloatfly Swarm while it has 1/1 counters on it, prevent that damage, remove that many 1/1 counters from it, then give each player a rad counter for each 1/1 counter removed this way. Or a card I can't stop talking about for some reason recently, Siegfried Famed Swordsman is very good. 3 and a black, 2/2 menace, enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards, then put X 1/1 counters on him where X is twice the number of creatures in your graveyard. Yeah, if we just got 4 creatures chilling in there, he gets 8 counters. He's a 10/10 menace with our commander 10/10 menace haste for 4. Sure. What about Ignition Team, dude? 5 and 2 red, 0/0, enters with a 1/1 counter where X is the number of tapped lands on the battlefield. Yeah, not under your control, on the battlefield. Then you can pay 2 and a red, remove a 1/1 counter from Ignition Team. Target land becomes a 4/4 red elemental until end of turn, and it's still a land. My favorite that I came across, though, was Aetherborn Marauder being 3 and a black, 2/2, flying, lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, move any number of 1/1 counters from any other permanents you control onto Aetherborn Marauder. So if we have that Bloatfly and we have that Ignition Team and we have like, let's say 15 counters, we can just drop this and be like, oh, what? I have a 17/17 flying lifelink haste? What? I'm all of a sudden back in the game, boys? Bring. We've also got a few ways to give global 1/1 counters. This is to possibly enable haste for some of our creatures that don't enter with 1/1 counters. It's mainly to interact with our modification package, which we'll talk about after this. Stuff like Agatha's Soul Cauldron, you can start putting 1/1 counters by exiling creatures from your graveyard. Drana puts a 1/1 on your whole board when it attacks. Gev Scaled Scorch has all your creatures enter with a 1/1 counter on them, equal to the amount of opponents that lost life this turn. And Uncivil Unrest has all non-token creatures you control gain Riot, which means they can enter the battlefield with a 1/1 counter or haste. And look at that, in our deck, we get both. So with all these counters and counter interaction, of course, we run the brand new stuff that cares about modified that came out in Kamigawa. I think this was the big reason I think this deck could be ran more. Stuff like Aki Battle Squad, 5 and a red, 6/6, when 1 or more modified creatures you control attack, untap all modified creatures you control. After this combat phase, there is an additional combat phase. Or something like Thundering Raiju being 2 and 2 red, 3/3, haste. When it attacks, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, then Thundering Raiju deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of modified creatures you control other than Thundering Raiju. Or you feel like playing an 8-drop, 8/8 trample that's going to cost 1 less for each modified creature you control and has hexproof as long as it's untapped. Sure. I think you've got a very interesting, super aggressive Rakdos list that kind of itches a part of my brain. Rakdos normally doesn't itch too much. So I think this is interesting. Again, if you've got any suggestions for a deck like this, drop them in the comments. You can check out a little mock-up, rough draft version of these decks down in the description. And with that, let's move on to underplayed commander number 3. Coming in with 483 decks, underplayed commander number 3 is Elrond of the White Council. Being 3 a green and a blue for a 3/3, when he enters the battlefield, each player secretly votes for fellowship or aid. Then those votes are revealed. For each fellowship vote, the voter chooses a creature they control, and you gain control of that creature. That creature gains, this creature can't attack its owner. Then for each aid vote, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Most of the time, people are gonna have like little tokens here or there, or like small utility creatures here or there. They're gonna just probably choose the fellowship one, choose their little creature, give it to you. Maybe this is a non-starter, maybe this deck isn't the best. But then when you look into it, you just run it as a blink token deck. You just flood your side of the board. If they give you tokens, who cares? That's more bodies on your side for you to bash their face with. You always vote for aid, and you give 1/1 counters to your entire board, and hopefully, or not even hopefully, because you run so much blink, you will force opponents to start giving you good options, or they have to add additional 1/1 counters to your full board. Neither one's gonna be great. Plus, blink is really nice because it acts as protection, which with a 5-drop commander feels really nice, because if anyone tries to remove it, you can just not only blink it to protect it, you'll also just get another trigger out of it. Very nice. So we're gonna run the blink classics like Blur, 2 and a blue, exile target creature you control, return it into play, draw a card. Stuff like Deadeye Navigator, 4 and 2 blue, 5/5 Soul Bond. Both creatures have 1 and a blue, exile this creature, return it back into play. Displacer Kitten, turning our non-creature spells into additional blink. Stuff like Essence Flux, Planar Incision, Siren's Ruse. It's a huge. The rough draft version of the deck that I built down below runs 12, so I think we've got plenty of ways to be blinking stuff. But what's really cool here, as someone pointed out in one of my videos, and I feel like I might have replied to it gutturally. I might have been too big of it. Might have drawn it out of the old, drew the pistol out too quick there. Someone said that 2 of the decks I built on the Power on a Budget video were too reliant on the commander, and like when the commander wasn't out, the deck didn't fire off. And my reply to that was like, yep, some decks are like that. But then I'm like, no, that was a pretty good point. Maybe I should take that into account and change some of my future builds. So this deck, yes, the big theme is you're playing Elrond and you're blinking Elrond over and over to steal stuff or buff your creatures, but also has the follow-up theme of you run a ton of other creatures that just ETB and make you tokens, so even if Elrond's not on the field, you can just continue to blink those, do the token strategy anyway, and then when you build up enough mana to just play Elrond again out of command zone, your strategy can still do its thing. So, thank you for the suggestion. My bad on the comment. So, creatures like Avendra Zendikar being 5 and 2 green, 5/5. When it enters the battlefield, make a 0/1 plant for each land you control. Whenever a land enters, put a 1/1 counter on each plant you control. Yeah, blinking that's going to be a good alternative to blinking our commander. Deep Forest Hermit, 3 and 2 green. When it enters, make 4/1/1 squirrels. Gruff Triplets, 3 and 3 green, being a 3/3 trample. When it enters the battlefield, if it isn't a token, create 2 tokens that are copies of it. This one can get disgusting because when Gruff Triplets dies, put a number of 1/1 counters equal to its power on each other Gruff Triplets you control. Again, there's 15 examples of these down in the deck list, but it is a good backup plan because a 5-drop commander, you can't always rely on having it in play and having the blink to protect it, so having these creatures to follow up to present some kind of pressure on the board is very useful. And with all these counters going around and tokens getting buffed from our commander and from Avengers and Zendikars and stuff like that, we run a little token buff synergy package with stuff like Champion of Lambbolt getting bigger when creatures come into play and preventing anything smaller than Champion of Lambbolt from blocking any creature we control. Herald of Secret Streams giving anything with a 1/1 counter on it unblockability, or something like Master Biomancer just causing more counters to be put on stuff when they enter. I think you've got a really good deck here. You're really applying the pressure over the course of the game. Tons of bodies are hitting the floor. Tons of counters are getting put on your stuff. Yeah, even if they deal with your commander, again, blink it in response, and if you can't do that, let it go to bin, draw into the blink, and blink one of your token makers, and keep going aggro and keep going for the next. Like, it seems pretty good. Plus, forces some kind of politics. Like, I think if you're not a social player most of the time, or you don't run a lot of political cards, this might be a fun deck to build, and that's honestly, the only reason I say that is because I am that player, and I'm considering building it, because it'll force a cool dynamic where maybe there's a play you could do where if someone gives you their super strong creature when you play Elrond, you might be able to stop the player that's been really oppressive at your table from doing something. So you might be able to be like, hey, if I blink Elrond, will you give me that creature and will you give me that creature so I can use them to swing at this dude that's ahead, get him behind so we're all level again, and then let's say I use another blink spell to blink your creatures back under your control. You know what I mean? There's like cool like political plays with this deck too that I really, really like. So if you've got any card suggestions for Elrond, leave them down in the comments. Again, rough draft deck list are down in the description. And with that, let's move on to commander number 4 of our underplayed list today. Underplayed commander number 4 is, and I know I'm mispronouncing this more than likely. I'm not gonna ever not say it like this because it's too much fun. Papalimo Tatalimo, who is a black and a white for a 1/2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Papalimo Tatalimo deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. You can also pay 4, tap, and sacrifice Papalimo Tatalimo. Each opponent who lost life this turn sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. You telling me this is Orzhov Spellslinger? Yeah, every non-creature spell turns into a, not life drain, 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life, so you could throw something like Basilisk Collar onto this dude and you're gaining 3 or gaining 4 off of each trigger of this. Yikes. But this doesn't take the normal like, oh, let's run life gain, let's do the whole life gain thing, which is why I respect it. It's like an Orzhov Spellslinger group slug deck, and I love it. The whole point is you're just spellslinging to make people lose life with your commander, and you gain life, and you're running other group slug cards in Orzhov that are like, hey, are you gonna do that? Well, you're gonna lose too. Or you're gonna leave that untapped? Really? No, it's just not something I would do. Lose 4. Oh, you're gonna swing at me with those 6 creatures? Lose 6. It's not really stacks, it's group slug. We're trying to get people to lose life for game actions, which I think is Orzhov. I've definitely had other. Campbell was a big one. Campbell's chicken noodle soup. That's very group sluggish. The fact that you're like spell slinging in Orzhov, this is really cool actually. So in Orzhov, we actually do have access to some pretty cool spell slinger-esque trigger cards. So stuff like Black Mage's Rod being 1 in a black, an equipment that equips for 3, job select enters with a 1/1 that it equips to, equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent and is a wizard in addition to its other types. We pretty much can turn another creature, or our commander, into another trigger of our commander whenever we spell sling. We're gonna run all the Black Mage cards because they're absolutely busted in this. Circle of Power, 3 in a black sorcery, draw 2, you lose 2, create a 0/1 black wizard creature token with, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, deal 1 damage to each opponent, and wizards you control get +1/+0 and gain lifelink until end of turn. These little black wizards are overpowered, especially in this list. Cornered by Black Mages is 1 and 2 black for a sorcery. Target opponent sacrifices a creature of their choice. Create a 0/1 Black Mage with, whenever you cast a non-creature, deal 1, gain 3. Very good. We've also got stuff like Monastery Mentor, 2 and a white, 2/2 prowess. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, make a 1/1 monk with prowess, or something like Professor Onyx being a planeswalker with Magecraft. So whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, each opponent loses 2, and we gain 2. Not only do all of those fall under the group slug category of like slowly draining and dealing damage to opponents, they're also all triggered by spell slinging, just like our commander, so amazing. On top of this, we can run more group slug cards. Stuff like Ankh of Mishra being a 2-drop artifact that each time a player puts a land into play, it deals 2 damage to them. Of course, Blood Artist turning any creature dying into target opponent losing 1 and us gaining 1. Or the aforementioned Kambal Consul of Allocation being 1 a black and a white for a 2/3. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, that player loses 2 and you gain 2. Yeah, you can quickly see how I'm genuinely shocked this isn't played more. This seems really fun and really good. Like if Kambals ran this much, how is Tatalimo Papalimo not ran more when it's that fun to say? I probably said it wrong. And yeah, just like any good Spellslinger deck, we're not going to have a ton of bodies on board, at least ones that we're willing to block with. So stuff that prevents opponents from attacking us is probably going to be good. Ghostly Prison, you're going to want to pay 2 if you attack me with anything. Ravaged by Raisins, you're going to... Ravaged by Ravens. Yeah, you're gonna go ahead and lose some life if you attack me. Or something like Blind Obedience. Yeah, if you have haste, don't attack me. Throw in an Aetherflex Reservoir to start doming people for 50 damage because we're gaining so much life. Or a Mind Crank to start milling opponents whenever we activate our commander or our Black Mages. And yeah, this is easily my 2nd favorite deck on the list. My favorite one's the next deck, so I think that one's a Spicer. Orzhov Spellslinger, rough draft deck down in the description. If you have any suggestions for this list, drop them in the comments. And with that, let's move on to Underplayed Commander number 5. With 211 decks. I'm not kidding. Do I look like I'm kidding, boy? Do I look funny? With 211 decks are the partner commanders Kodama of the East Tree and Silas Wren, Seeker Adept. Kodama of the East Tree is 4 and 2 green for a 6/6 reach. Whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't put there with this ability, you may put a permanent card with equal or lesser converted mana value from your hand onto the battlefield. And its buddy Silas Wren is 1 a blue and a black for a 2/2 Death Touch. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, choose target artifact in your graveyard. You may cast that card this turn. I think I'm gonna build this deck. I know I say that a lot. I genuinely think I'm gonna build this deck. The fact this has 211 list, what is wrong with you people? Getting to cast artifacts out of your graveyard with Silas connecting is incredibly easy and powerful. And with Kodama, when your artifacts are played from your graveyard, Kodama will trigger and you can cheat artifacts out of hand, and you're just getting like buy one get ones and tons of recursion in an artifact deck. This is just a really cool Sultai artifact deck. Build this. More people build this. This is sick. First off, I love the big boy artifacts that are going to enter for cheaper. So stuff like Metalwork Colossus being an 11 drop 10/10 that cost X less, where X is the total mana value of non-creature artifacts you control. Yeah, if we play like 3 mana rocks, this thing's gonna cost 6 less, and then with those 3 mana rocks you can get this thing out on like turn 3 or 4. And then guess what? From your graveyard with Silas, you can cast it for the same amount, super cheap, but its mana cost stays at 11. So with our Kodama, we'll be able to cheat in. There you go, huge shit. I also really like Thought Monitor for this same reason. 6 and a blue, affinity for artifacts. 2/2 flying. When it enters, draw 2 cards. Yeah, 7 drop you could play for 1 blue in this deck. That will then cheat a 7 drop or lower into play. Like, let's say a Spine of Ishsaw. Yeah, buy one, get one free. Yeah, if you, oh, did you play that big ass thing? Hey, we're having a special today. You get to also fuck up this guy as well. No, it's on us. You've also got clones like Phyrexian Metamorph or Sculpting Steel, which can enter the battlefield as our artifacts, which I believe still retain the mana cost of the thing they're copying when they enter and trigger Kodama. Correct me if I'm wrong. I still think they're worth running either way, but I'm pretty sure it works that way, which makes them incredibly overpowered in this. Tons of awesome artifact synergy cards like Mystic Forge, letting you play artifacts off the top of your deck. Esoteric Duplicator, letting you create token copies of artifacts you play. Or stuff like Mirrored and Besieged, turning your artifacts into 1/1 colorless mirror artifact tokens, or winning you the game at the end of turn if you have 15 or more artifacts in grave. Someone board wipes, you go, oh, matter of fact, I'm gonna drop this. Pass the turn. Oh, wait. You lose. And then, of course, my favorite thing in the world in any artifact deck, especially this artifact deck that can trigger Kodama and cares about big mana costs, but more importantly, those big mana costs coming out for cheaper. Love me some artifact cost reducers. Ethereum Sculptors in the deck, reducing artifact cost by 1. Foundry Inspectors in the deck, reducing artifact cost by 1. Karn Legacy Reforged in the deck, adding us a bunch of waste for the amount of artifacts we control so we can play bigger artifacts and cheat out more stuff with Kodama. Ooh. And with Silas and Kodama firing off, not only are we going to flood the board, we also get to run, because we're in Sultai, tons of good recursion. Stuff like Anrakir the Traveler being 4 and a black for a 4/4. Whenever it attacks, you may cast an artifact spell from your hand or graveyard by paying life equal to its mana cost. Of course, we got Junk Diver, Scrap Taller, and Mere Retriever, along with stuff like Emery, Lurker of the Lock. I seriously think you have a very cool artifact list. Like, as a Sultai player, I have tried building an artifact deck multiple times. I tried going like Azorius artifacts. I tried going Azit artifacts, Jeskai artifacts. It was never hitting. And I realized I'm a Simic player. I guess artifacts aren't for me. Come to find out, I can still do artifacts. And this is underplayed through the floorboards. 211 decks. If you have some suggestions for this, I'm sure you do, because it's a banger list already, and it's just a rough draft. You can check that out, description. Leave those suggestions in the comments. And with that, let's move on to the final 6th underplayed commander of the video. The final underplayed commander of today's video, with 208 decks, is Dragonlord Silumgar. Dragonlord Silumgar is 4, a blue and a black for a 3/5 flying death touch. When it enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature or planeswalker for as long as you control Dragonlord Silumgar. You know what? I kind of get it. I kind of get why it's not ran so much, okay? In a bubble, when you read this commander, you go like, it's a fun ability. I'd run that in like the 99 or in like a 60 card format. As my commander, a little boring. But then when you start building this thing, I think it actually is really cool. So at its core, it is just a theft deck. It is all about stealing your opponent's stuff, which is fun. There are some like better Grixis options. There's definitely some better Dimir options if you're going for strictly power. But a lot of those options don't offer you a straight up theft on ETB on a pretty good body. So I think it's definitely worth talking about. So first things first, we got to secure the bag. We got to start stealing the opponent's stuff. So we've got stuff like Agent of Treachery, of course, being 5 and 2 blue, 2/3. When it enters, gain control of target permanent. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents you don't own, draw 3 cards. Can do, buddy. We've got stuff like Mind Flayer being 3 and 2 blue, 3/3. When it enters, gain control of something for as long as you control Mind Flayer. Sower of Temptation being 2 and 2 blue for a 2/2 flying that does the same thing. Or a card like Kyaga the Tide Star being 4 and a blue, 5/5 flying. When it dies, gain control of target creature, which is a pretty good threat to drop on the table, but also interacts really well with our Feign Death package we run in the deck. So we run cards like Feign Death. The next time a creature would die, return it to the battlefield. Not Dead at All. Malakir Rebirth. Return to action. There's tons of these cards. we run all of them. If someone tries to deal with Salumgar to get their creature back, we drop one of these on Salumgar, it returns into play, we take the creature anyway, or if there's something better, we take the better thing. Or in the case of Kayega, if Kayega is about to die, drop a Feign Death on it, get the death trigger, gain control of something, and then have a Kayega still. Pretty good. We also run the clones that can clone legendaries because getting more Salumgars in play seems like it'll be pretty good for stealing stuff. So stuff like Autom Soldier being a 4 and 2 blue clone that doesn't care about the legend rule, stuff like Spark Double doing the same, or Sakashima the Imposter, or Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. All these clones don't care if it's legendary, so we're just getting more Salumgars, which is good in this deck. This deck also runs a Blink package with stuff like Ghostly Flicker, Planar Incision, all the stuff we talked about with the Simic deck. And I hear you saying, Nick, why are we running Blink? I understand Salumgar's an ETB trigger, but once Salumgar leaves with the exile the Blink, it's just going to give back the thing you stole, so you're not really getting anything out of that. You would be correct. You would be correct normally. But that's why in this deck, after we secure the bag, steal the creature, we need to sack the bag, okay? Because once we spend all that dough, we don't need the bag anymore. We gotta sack that bag. So we run sack outlets, like Altar of Dementia, turning a sacked creature into mill for our opponents, Ashnod's Altar, turning a sacked creature into mana ramp, stuff like Dread Return, having a flashback for sacking a creature and then lets us return a creature from our graveyard into play, or something as powerful as Razaketh the Foul-Blooded, letting us sack a creature to tutor our library for a card. We run a bunch of sack outlets in this deck. We're going to gain control of the creature, use them for as long as we want for combat, for their abilities, and then when we're done with them, we sack them to our sack outlets, we blink the Salumgar or whatever else we have in play to gain control of stuff, and we gain control of a new batch of creatures that we then use, abuse, and sack, baby. Also, throw a Dictative Erebos and a Grave Pact in here because I feel like the salt in the wound isn't quite salty enough yet.
Morska Undersea Sleuth, who is a green, a white, and a blue for a 2/3. You have no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, investigate. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put 2 1/1 counters on Morska Undersea Sleuth. Listen, if you're looking for power on a budget, guaranteed card draw, and a guaranteed way to buff up a threat, those are 2 pretty good things to have. In the Bant colors, however, looking into building a Clue deck, my god, do you have access to pretty much all of the biggest, best pieces for like under $1. Nice job. If you're on a budget, pretty good strategy to go with. Going through our clue producers, we've got Ongoing Investigation, which is an enchantment that turns our creatures dealing combat damage into investigations that can also exile a creature from our graveyard, investigate, and gain us 2 life. Ulvenwald Mysteries is 2 and a green for an enchantment that turns non-creature tokens we control dying into investigations, and whenever we sack a clue, we create a 1/1 white human token. Wave Sifter is a massive 5-drop 3/2 flying, but we can evoke it for a green and a blue, and when it enters, we investigate twice. So 2 mana investigate twice, that's gonna be good. Armed with Proof is a super interesting one. 2 and a white enchantment, when it enters, investigate twice. Clues you control are equipments in addition to their other types, and have equipped creatures get +2/+0 until end of turn. Disorder in the Court is an X drop that blinks X creatures and then investigates X times. Ethereum Investigator investigates X times equal to the amount of opponents we control when it ETBs. It also creates us a 1/1 white spirit with flying whenever we draw our second card. Follow the Bodies is a 3-drop sorcery with Gravestorm and Investigate. Innocuous Researcher is a 4-drop 3/4 that when it attacks, each player reveals the top card of their library. For each non-land card revealed this way, you investigate, then each player draws a card. At the beginning of your end step, you may untap all your lands, but you don't get to cast spells until your next turn. That's fine, we're going to use all this land to crack clue tokens during opponent's turns, trigger our commander to give 1/1 counters during opponent's turns. It's going to be great. Kellen Inquisitive Prodigy is a 4-drop 3/4 flying that destroys artifacts when it connects, and its adventure side investigates and lets you play an additional land. So this is mana ramp, removal, and card draw. Love that. Lotus Cryptozoologist turns non-token ETBs on our side into investigations. We can also sack clues to steal stuff off the top of opponent's decks. Gotta love that. Piper Wright turns the combat damage she does into that many clue tokens. Ransom Note is a clue itself, but does some unique stuff. It's a 1-drop, it surveils 1 on ETB. You can pay 2 to sack it to do one of the following: cloak the top card of your library, goad target creature, or draw a card. Sharp-Eyed Rookie is a 2-drop 2/2 vigilance. It's essentially got evolve, except you also investigate. So whenever you play something bigger than Sharp-Eyed Rookie, it gets a 1/1 counter, you investigate. Of course, we got Tireless Tracker, turning lands into investigations. We got Wojak Investigator, which on our upkeep will let us investigate for each opponent who has more cards than us. Merchant of Truth turns non-token creatures we control dying into investigations, while also giving clues we control exalted. Peregrine Took makes us food while we're making clues, so I guess not technically a part of the clue package, but here he is. He also lets us sack 3 foods to draw a card, so he's in here. He's good. I like him. Lavinia, foil to Conspiracy, is 1 and 2 hybrid Azorius for a 2/3 Vigilance. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, Investigate. Perfect for this deck already. And then you can tap it to add 2 colorless to your mana pool. Activate only during opponent's turns. Absolutely perfect for this deck. Now, with all these clues being cracked during our turn, during opponent's turns, we're trying to get that draw a second card trigger on our commander to start giving 1/1 counters. We've also got another small package of cards that give us benefits when we draw our second card. Detective of the Month lets us create 2/2 white and blue detectives when we draw our second card. Ethereum Investigator gives us 1/1 white spirits with flying. Alondra gives us 2/2 blue drakes with flying. That can also, if you draw on your 5th card, give a massive buff to Alondra and all of your drakes. Emrakul's Messenger makes Eldrazi spawn when we draw our second card, and On the Trail lets us play an additional land out of our hand when we draw our second card. Keep in mind, these all say each turn, so you can get these to trigger on your turn, opponent's turns, and we're in a clue deck. It's going to happen all the time. So already you can see there's a ton of powerful stuff in here on a budget, but let's talk about the actual haymakers in this deck, because there is a ton of powerful cards that can straight up end the game that are available for this list that are extremely budget friendly while being some real molly whoppers. Jolrael Muvani Recluse is 1 and a green for a 1/2. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 2/2 green cat creature token. Oh, she should have been on the last thing, but she's also a win con, so here she is. You can also pay 2 and 2 green until end of turn. Creatures you control become XXs, where X is the number of cards in your hand. In a clue deck? Yeah. I'll make all my stuff massive, that seems fine. Sticking to the theme of card draw equals beat your face in, Knowledge is power is 3, a white and a blue for an enchantment. Creatures you control get +X/+X, where X is the number of cards you've drawn this turn. Now if you pair this with Jolrael, they should be dead. They should be long gone. We got Rise and Shine being a 1 and a blue sorcery that can turn target non-creature artifact into a 4/4, and it's also got Overload, so we can turn all of our clues into 4/4s. Again, we can win the game off that. Same goes for Tanglegrove Kelp being a 5 and 2 blue 6/6 ward 2. At the beginning of each combat, other clues we control become 6/6 plants. Also, Tanglegrove Kelp is a clue. You can sack it to draw a card if you need to get triggers off the commander. It's kind of weird, but it's good. Kappa Cannoneer, one of my favorite cards ever printed. 5 and a blue, 4/4, improvise, ward 4. This thing's going to be coming out for 1 blue most games. Whenever this creature or another artifact you control enters, put a 1/1 counter on this creature. It can't be blocked this turn. Of course, we got Psychosis Crawler, turning all of our card draw into ping for the opponents. That's going to be fantastic. Essex Fractal Bloom is actually really good in this deck, turning the next time we would make 1 or more tokens. Instead, we make that many token copies of another creature we control. I don't know, we'll just like Disorder in the Court for like 6, have them all enter the battlefield as like a tireless tracker. That seems okay. That seems decent. Homunculus Horde, another one of my favorites. Whenever we draw our second card each turn, you create a copy of Homunculus Horde. So 4, 8, 16, 32, you get it. Win the game. And then finally, Mechanized Production. 2 and 2 blue, enchanted to an artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of that artifact. If you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game. I could say the corny thing where it's like, did you know that they all don't have to be the same? You've all seen the clip. We've all seen the clip. The deck also runs Wilderness Reclamation. I wasn't sure where to put it, so here it is. It's too good not to run 3 and a green at the beginning of your end step. Untap all lands you control. We get to crack clues during opponent's turns. That's the bread and butter here. Here's a look at the deck's card draw, mana ramp, removal, board interaction, land base, all that stuff on the screen for you nerds. So yeah, with that, you've got a budget deck where you're going to have giant hand sizes, tons of powerful stuff to do, huge creatures, tons of different win cons. And I want to be honest, I love me a good Bant value list, and this is very much milk the sweet peat of value. This reminds me of that clip where there's the girl crying because there's the old guy eating alone at a Cracker Barrel, but it pans over to the old guy and he's like completely fine. He's like eating his ham, he's having a great day. He's like, oh, I'm gonna head out golfing. Finished golfing, came and eat his little sugar ham, little cinnamon sugar apples. That's how I feel with like Bant value and Simic value decks. People are like, okay, cool. Yeah, you're just doing like a Simic value thing. And I'm over there like, it's fun. And apparently it's fantastic on a budget, so here you go. As with all the decks we're going to talk about today, you can find the links for these decks down in the description. And with that, let's move on to deck number 2. Deck number 2 is based around Hope Esteem? Esthium? I'm just going to call him Hope. Hope is a white and a blue for a 2/2 lifelink. Hope is a white and a blue. Hope is a 2/2 lifelink. Hope is at the beginning of your end step. Each opponent mills X cards, where X is the amount of life you gained this turn. That's Hope. No, what it is busted. This is an absolutely cracked commander. It is 26 cents on TCG Player. Sure. Okay, buddy, sure. I don't know if you know this, gaining a shit ton of life on a budget, not hard to do at all. And milling each opponent for that much, incredibly powerful. So let's get into how we can abuse that. So obvious first place we're going to start here. How do we gain life in this deck? There's 36 different cards that will gain you life. We're going to go through all of them. Going to kind of go a little speedy here. All right. Adventurer's Inn is a land that is colorless that will gain you 2 when it enters the battlefield. Basilica Guards is 2 and a white for a 1/4 with Defender and Extort. Battle Menu is a 1 and a white instant where you can choose one. You can either make a 2/2 Knight. You can give target creature +0/+4, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater, or gain 4 life. Congregate is 3 and a white for an instant. Target player gains 2 life for each creature on the battlefield. Yeah, on the battlefield. Dazzling Angel turns creatures we control entering into 1 life. Same goes for Distinguished Conjurer. It can also blink something we control for 5. Divine Offering destroys target artifact and we gain life equal to its mana cost. Ariet's Lullaby destroys target tapped creature and we gain 2 life. Invoke the Divine destroys target artifact or creature and we gain 4 life. Knight of Dawn's Light, a 2-drop 2/2 first strike that gains us an additional 1 whenever we gain life. Life Creed Duo, again, a 2-drop that will gain us 1 whenever a creature ETBs on our side. Light's Hope is a 1 white instant with choose 1, you gain 4 life, destroy target enchantment, or put a 1/1 counter on target creature. Lucky Offering is a 1 white destroy target artifact with mana value 3 or less, and you gain 3 life. Nyx's Fleece Ram is a 1 and a white 0/5 that gains us 1 on our upkeep. Rest for the Weary gains us 4, and if a land entered, it gains us 8. Revitalize is a 1 and a white instant, gain 3, draw a card. Sanctify is a 1 and a white sorcery that destroys an artifact or enchantment and gains us 3. Solemn Offering is a 2 and a white sorcery that destroys target artifact or enchantment and gains us 4. Syndic of Tithes is a 1 and a white 2/2 with Extort. War Report gains us life equal to the number of creatures on the battlefield plus the number of artifacts on the battlefield. So if you're going against that, if you're going against the last deck we talked about, it's even better because that last deck's gonna draw a bunch of cards. Yeah, if you're gonna buy all these decks, play this one. Daxus turns creatures ETBing on our side into life gain. Evra is super cool, being 4 and 2 white for a 4/4 lifelink. You can pay 4 to exchange life totals with Evra's power. So you do it the first time. Let's say you're at 60. Evra becomes a 60/60. You go to 4 life, and then you pay 4 and you do it again. You just went from 4 to 60. So you just gained 56 life. Everyone mills 56. We've got Quain, which lets every player draw a card and then gain a life. Sure. Impassioned Orator gains a life when creatures ETB. Same goes for Lunarch Veteran. Peach Garden Oath is a 1 white sorcery. You gain 2 life for each creature you control. Sanguine Sacrifice is X and 2 white for an instant. You gain twice X life. Put Sanguine Sacrament on the bottom of its owner's library. Goldforged Thoptrix is a white and a blue 1/3 flying lifelink. Each legendary permanent you control has ward 2. Lifelink as well as good protection for our commander. We will take it. Hinterland Sanctifier is another gain a life when a creature ETBs. Ashes of the Abhorrent is a gain a life whenever a creature dies. Dawn of Hope makes 1/1s with lifelink. Sphinx's Revelation is an X, a white and 2 blue to gain X life and draw X cards. Angel of Vitality lets us gain an additional 1 whenever we gain life. Dragskull Reaver is a 7-drop 3/5 flying double strike lifelink that draws us a card whenever we gain life. Yikes. Ivory Tower is a 1-drop artifact that gains us 1 life for each card in our hand above 4 on our upkeep, and Shabraz the Sky Shark gains us 1 life and puts a 1/1 counter on itself whenever we draw a card. We also run some life gain buff cards because our commander has lifelink and some other creatures in our deck have lifelink, so that's another great way to get things bigger, gain more life. Nykthos Paragon, whenever we gain life, each creature we control gets that many 1/1 counters. Okay, yeah, sure. Sunbound and Light of the Promise can both go onto our commander or a lifelink creature because whenever we gain life, put that many 1/1 counters on that creature. Meaning if we gain 14 life on a turn, our 2/2 just became a 16/16 and it has lifelink, so we'll gain an additional way more next turn. And yeah, exponential growth, name of the game. Outside of the straight up game plan of gain a ton of life, mill, throw in some of those buff cards, protection pieces, pretty much roll out a control game plan with a life gain, mill, shell. There's a couple other cards that can just straight up help you bring home games. Space Time Anomaly, oh my gosh. 2 a white and a blue for a sorcery. Target player mills cards equal to your life total. Target player loses. We've also got Will, Scion of Peace, because my lord, 1 a white and a blue for a 2/4 vigilance. Tap it. Spells you cast this turn that are white and or blue cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life you gained this turn. And sure, this will just help reduce all of our stuff's cost by a ton, let us spam out a bunch of mill. Very, very good. But the deck also, in its card draw kit, runs Stroke of Genius, Drown in Dreams, Fascination, all targeted card draws. So we could use this reduction to help with us milling somebody out, which is very, very nice. Or we could just dump it all into a Sphinx's Revelation and fill up our hand, whichever feels the most right. Again, Hopus theme is extremely budget, incredibly powerful, with a theme that lends itself to a light wallet, which we love on this series. If you want to take a look at the card draw, mana ramp, removal, board interaction, land base, it's on the screen right now. And if you want to take a look at the full deck more in depth, you can click on the deck link down in the description. And with that, let's move on to power on a budget deck Number 3, power on a budget deck. Number 3 is based around Celeste Rune Knight, who is 1, a red, a white, and a black for a 4/4. When Celeste enters, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards +1. Whenever one or more other creatures you control enters, if one or more of them entered from a graveyard or was cast from a graveyard, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Yeah, that says each. So this is my ballpark. This is literally my ballpark. When I played Standard way back in the day, when I was a young sprout, when I was a young 8 to 12-year-old little sprout, I loved running the white weenie deck. That was my favorite deck, okay? Now, as a Commander player, my favorite deck is Reanimator. This is a weenie Reanimator deck. Now, think of it kind of like a Terra deck. Now, you might ask, why didn't you just go Terra? You could go Terra if you wanted to. Terra's more expensive, like, money-wise. Also, Terra doesn't give 1/1 counters to your entire board when something enters from your graveyard, and Terra doesn't have a built-in wheel effect to help fill your graveyard. I actually kind of like this build better, and I'll show you why. So the first thing we want to talk about are the actual things we're going to be reanimating. So instead of a normal Reanimator deck where we run tons of huge creatures, we try to cheat them into grave to then cheat them into play with reanimation spells, we're running tons of tiny creatures, tiny 1, 2, and 3 drops that will enter and create us tokens. To 1, help us flood the board with bodies so that when our commander triggers to give 1/1 counters to our board, we have tons of stuff to give those 1/1 counters to. And 2, we run these cheap creatures that make tokens because we run sack outlets to help us filter these creatures back in and out of grave. So a good starting point here, I would think, is to talk about some of those 3 or less drop creatures that enter and make tokens. So let's get into it. Blade Splicer is a 2 and a white 1/1 that enters with a 3/3 golem. Callous Blood Mage is a 2 and a black 2/1 that enters with a 1/1 pest, or you can draw a card and lose 1, or you can exile target player's graveyard. Love some modal options. Charforger enters with a 1/1 Phyrexian. Countless Gears Renegade enters with a 1/1 Servo. Embalmed Ascendant enters with a 2/2 Zombie. Goblin Instigator enters with a 1/1 Goblin. Hanged Executioner enters with a 1/1 Spirit with Flying. Honored Knight Captain enters with a 1/1 Soldier. Inside Source enters with a 2/2 Detective. Mage's Attendant enters with a 1/1 blue wizard that you can sack to counter target non-creature spell unless someone pays 1. I love this card, man. Great option in this deck, too. Mog War Marshal enters and leaves with a 1/1 red goblin. Love that. Pia Nalar enters with a 1/1 colorless Thopter. Resolute Reinforcements enters with a 1/1 soldier. And Toby Beastie Befriender enters with a 4/4 white beast. Yeah, they used to call me the same thing back in school. The white beast. That's because I chugged 3 gallons of milk and threw up in the hallway, though. Tons of small bodies that will enter and make more bodies. So that's step number 1. Step number 2, how are we going to get those bodies in our graveyard? We do have sack outlets that we're going to be talking about. Our creatures are just low cost, so we're probably just going to play them, have them die due to sack outlets or combat, then recur them, or just discard them out of our hand and then recur them. We don't have a ton of ways to fill grave because I feel like the deck kind of just will naturally do that itself, but we do run some ways. Faithless Looting, draw 2, discard 2. It's a good way to get some small creatures out of our hand. Perpetual Timepiece can tap to mill us 2, as well as pay 2, exile it, shuffle any number of cards from our graveyard back into our library. This can make sure we don't, A, overmill ourselves, which we won't really do in this deck, or 2, if the game goes long, we have an option to have a way to maybe last longer than other people at the table. Shinra Reinforcements is a 2 and a black 2/3. When it enters, you mill 3, gain 3. This is great because it's a 3-drop, so we can reanimate this as well when it dies, sack it to a sack outlet, reanimate it, put a 1/1 counter on everything, mill 3 more cards. It's actually really nice. Siegfried, Famed Swordsman, is fantastic. It's not 3 or less, but I do think it's good enough to go in here still. 3 and a black, 2/2, Menace. When it enters, mill 3 cards, then put X 1/1 counters on Siegfried, where X is twice the number of creatures in your graveyard. So yeah, you get a huge menace that just mills when it comes into play. I think this thing's actually fine, especially because some of the recursion pieces we run care about power and not mana cost, so that's actually really nice with this thing. And then, of course, we got Stitcher Supplier, 1-drop, 1/1, enters or dies, mill 3. That's this deck's bread and butter. Absolutely fantastic. This feels like an appropriate time to talk about the sack outlets. So the 6 sack outlets we run in the deck are Dark Dweller Oracle, turning sacrificed creatures into exile off the top of our deck that we can cast. Fanatical Devotion, turning sacked creatures into regeneration for target creature. Grafted War Gear, being an equipment that gives +3/+2, and then sacks the creature that it's unattaching to when you attach it to something and equips for 0. Viscera Seer, sacking a creature to scry 1. Woe Strider, doing the same, except it also enters and gives us a 0/1 goat, so that's putting in double work in this deck. And Yahenni, sacrificing a creature to give itself indestructible. So we've got the small creatures, we've got all the ways to put them in our graveyard. How are we recurring these creatures once we sack them, discard them, die in combat? whatever. Well, starting off, of course, we run Alesha, who smiles at death, being a 2 and a red 3/2 with first strike. Whenever it attacks, you can pay 2 Orzhov. If you do, return target creature with power 2 or less from your graveyard into play, tapped and attacking. This is what I meant with Siegfried. This will actually return Siegfried, so this is that's actually a pretty powerful synergy in the deck. Battle of Hoover Dam is a great option, being 3 and a white for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, choose NCR or Legion. If you chose NCR at the beginning of your end step, you return a creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. And if you chose Legion, whenever a creature you control dies, put 2 1/1 counters on target creature you control. Genuinely, both of these could be very useful in this list, whatever you need. We've got all the classic small instants and sorceries that return something that costs 3 or less. We've got Call a Surprise Witness, Can't Stay Away, Helping Hand, Recommission, Return Triumphant, Savine's Reclamation, Call of the Death Dweller. We got them all in here. The deck also runs Carnage Crimson Chaos, being 2, a black and a red for a 4/3 trample. When it enters, return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains. This creature attacks each combat, and when this creature deals combat damage to a player, sacrifice it. Mayhem, black and a red. Of course, the deck runs Sun Titan. It's one of my favorite cards in the world, plus this deck is absolutely perfect for it, being a 6-drop 6/6 Vigilance that returns a permanent that costs 3 or less on ETB or attack. And Teshar, Ancestor's Apostle, turns every historic spell we cast into returning a creature that costs 3 or less from our grave into play. So hopefully you could see the gameplay loop here. We're rushing weenie creatures into play that are also making tokens. We can either sack those weenies, they'll die in combat, or we have discarded them to our commander. We start reanimating stuff back into play, sacking stuff, reanimating it back into play. Every time we do that, our commander gives 1/1 counters to our full board. I've playtested this deck a couple times on Mox Field. It actually is incredibly explosive. You will randomly, like on turn 5 or 6, be like, oh, all my stuff has 5 or 6 counters on it. It's kind of nuts. Loopers are a big reason why this deck has the potential to pop off. There's 3 main looper cards that you can run while we're on a budget. We've got Bloodghast, which is 2 black for a 2/1. This creature can't block. This creature has haste as long as the opponent has 10 or less life, and whenever a land enters the battlefield, you may return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So yeah, sack Bloodghast to one of our sack outlets, play a land, get back Bloodghast. Our commander gives a 1/1 counter to the whole board, and we just get to do that pretty much every turn. So very, very good. Same goes for Bloodsoaked Champion, except he can only come back if we attacked this turn, and Reassembling Skeleton just straight up comes back for 1 and a black. We also run Molten Gatekeeper and Shocking Sharpshooter, because if we're going to be making all these tokens, playing all these weenie creatures anyway, we might as well be pinging opponents when we do that. And also the new, I don't know how to say his name, Gau? I don't know how to say his name. Feral Youth, 1 and a red, it's a 2/2. Whenever he attacks, put a 1/1 counter on him, and at the beginning of your end step, if a card left your graveyard this turn, he deals damage equal to his power to each opponent, giving himself 1/1 counters, and our commander dishing out a ton of 1/1 counters to our whole board. This dude becomes a serious threat in this deck, because again, stuff is going to come back into play. This will be firing off every turn, and if it's big enough, that's super scary. Also, cat. Here's a look at the deck's mana ramp, removal, card draw, board interaction, land base. Again, if you want to take a more in-depth look at the deck, it's deck number 3 down in the description. And with that, let's move on to Power on a Budget deck. Number 4. Our final Power on a Budget deck for today's video is based around Ariete the Beguiler, being 1, a white, a blue, and a black for a 4/4 lifelink. Whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value less than or equal to that aura's mana value, gain control of that permanent for as long as the aura is attached to it. So all of our auras are mind controls, as long as they cost equal to or less than the creature we're targeting. I was going to put this on more of like a unique or like fun decks that you can play video until I realized how many creatures there are in the game that can reduce the cost of auras. Guess. I want you to guess. Apparently there's a total of 10 cards on a budget that we can run that reduce the cost of auras, and that's way more than I was expecting, so it's a fucking go, baby. This deck's going. So we're trying to gain control of stuff, and the stuff we gain control of has to be equal to or less than the mana cost of the auras we're casting, so playing bigger auras is kind of a necessity, but playing bigger auras also make your deck not that good. So if you run a bunch of aura cost reducers, this deck becomes very, very good. So going over those really quickly, we run Transcendent Envoy, reducing the cost of auras by 1, Starheim Courser, reducing the cost of artifacts and enchantments by 1. We've also got Lies Hexed, reducing the cost of non-creature spells by 1, Sten, who can name a card type and reduce that card type by 1, Danitha, reducing the aura and equipment cost by 1, Hero of Erois, reducing the aura spells you cast by 1, Inquisitive Glimmer, reducing the enchantment spells you cast by 1, same goes for Starfield Mystic, Pearl Ear, Imperial Advisor, giving all your enchantments affinity for auras, yikes, and Helm of Awakening, reducing all spells by 1. Now pair this with our massive aura package, and you could quickly see how this deck becomes extremely controlling. And sure, that might not be the most fun for the table, but people have to experience control decks every now and then. They are fun to play. Again, old man at the Cracker Barrel. Let them cry at you, dude. You're having a blast eating your sugar ham. You're eating dumplings and sugar ham and apples, you're fine. We've got Astral Wingspan being 4 and a blue for an enchantment aura with Convoke, enchant creature. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, enchant creature gets +2/+2 flying. Oh, so not only do I get your creature, it's also got Convoke, so it could be really cheap, and I also give your creature a buff, +2/+2, and flying? I steal your milkshake. We also got Conclave's Blessing being a 3 and a white enchantment with enchantment aura with Convoke, enchant creature gets +0/+2 for each other creature you control. Flight of Fancy being a 3 and a blue, enchant creature gains flying, draw 2 cards when it ETBs. Fool's Demise being a 4 and a blue aura with, when enchant creature dies, return it to the battlefield under your control. When Fool's Demise is put into the graveyard, return it to your hand. Matter of fact, I like how it looks. I think I'll keep it. Glasswing Grace, very good. A land with a built-in 5-drop aura on the back that gives 2/2 lifelink flying. We like to see it. Take Flight, 4-drop aura that gives 1/0 flying whenever it deals combat damage. Draw a card. Twin Blade Blessing being a 1 and 2 white flash. Enchant creature has double strike. This one could be really funny to just steal something during an opponent's turn and be like, actually don't swing with that. I will though. For twice the damage. I'll do the damage you missed out on. Unholy Indenture, same deal as Fool's Demise. When the creature dies, it comes back under our control with a 1/1 counter, except this one costs 3. Protective Bubble gives enchanted creature unblockable and Shroud for 3 and a blue. Demonic Embrace is 1 and 2 black to give enchant creature +3/+1 flying and is a demon in addition to its other types. Righteous Authority is 3, a white and a blue to give enchant creature 1/1 for each card in its controller's hand. And at the beginning of the draw step of enchanted creature's controller, that player draws an additional card. Holy Mantle is 2 and 2 white for an aura that gives +2/+2 and protection from creatures. On Sierra's Wings is a 3 and a white aura that gives 1/1 flying, vigilance, and lifelink. Eye of the Nido? Not sure. 3 and a black for an aura that gives creature that turns the creature into a 4/2 flying death touch that's goaded, and when Eye of Niog is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, return it to its owner's hand. These enchantments that return themselves to our hand, they're gonna be gross in this list. Speaking of which, Fallen Ideal. Enchant creature has flying and sacrifice a creature. This creature gets +2/+1 until end of turn, and when Fallen Ideals is put into your graveyard, return it to your hand. Oh, I think I might. Steal someone's annoying little utility creature, their Esper Sentinel, and then crack it to itself. Have Fallen Ideals go back to our hand, play it on something else. Remember, we have aura reducers, so this is probably going to be like 1 black most games. Yeah, sorry. Curator's Ward is a 2 and a blue aura that gives hexproof, and when enchanted permanent leaves the battlefield, if it was historic, we draw 2 cards. Sure, we're gaining control of like an artifact creature, someone's commander. That'll come in useful. Minions Return, same deal as the other 2 we were talking about. Same deal as Fool's Demise and Fallen Ideals. It's a 2 and a black aura, brings back the thing when it dies under our control. And finally, Nerd Rage being 2 and a blue. When it enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards. Enchanted creature has, you have no maximum hand size. And when this creature attacks, if you have 10 or more cards in your hand, it gets +10/+10 until end of turn. We've also got some like nice enchantment trigger cards. We've got Ashiok's Reaper turning enchantments going to graveyards into card draw for us. Mesa Enchantress turning enchantments coming into play into card draw for us. Ghostly Dancers turning enchantments we cast into 3/1 spirits with flying, which is actually, that's a pretty good attack on that thing. Auramancer returning enchantments from our graveyard to our hand. Something like Heliod's Pilgrim to tutor us up an enchantment, or something like Doomwake Giant to give our opponent's creatures -1/-1 whenever we play an enchantment. Again, we are doing the control thing, so we run plenty of removal, plenty of counter spells like Negate, Keep Safe to protect our commander and our strategy. And on top of all this, of course, the deck runs Arna Kennerud Sky Captain, because why not? Doubling all of our auras that's attached to anything when it attacks? Yeah. With our mana rat being aura cost reducers, plenty of our card draw like Flight of Fancy, Take Flight, Hateful Eidolon, being enchantments, plenty of removal like Frogify, Unable to Scream, and Twisted Embrace being enchantments. This deck is super efficient at just constantly popping off with what it's trying to do, which is play the enchantment, steal your opponent's shit. Think of it like this video of the squirrel, okay? That squirrel is your opponent's creature that they really want. Rograk, Son of Roga, being a 0-drop, 0/1 first strike menace trample partner, who's partnered with our boy, Arden Intrepid Archaeologist for 2 and a white, being a 2/2. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may attach any number of auras and equipments you control to target permanent or player. So a free commander and then free equip cost, right off the bat, doing basic game actions for free.
gonna be pretty strong. This deck aims to play Rograk and Arden as quick as possible, and then play auras and equipments and throw them all onto Rograk or other powerful creatures that we will talk about. And yeah, you're taking a big piece of why equipment decks are kind of bad most of the time. You actually need a body to throw equipments onto, and you need to pay equip cost. This deck gives you a free body with a ton of keywords and free equip cost. Starting things off with our budget equipment options for this list, we've got Golem Skin Gauntlets being a 1-drop equipment that equips for 2, gives equipped creature +1/+0 for each equipment on it. We've also got really bad equipments that are only good in this deck, like Great Axe being a 1-drop equipment that gives +4/+0 but equips for 5. But since we can throw as many equipments or auras onto something as we want for free in this deck, this becomes really good. Hero's Blade being a 2-drop equipment, equips for 4, equipped creature gets +3/+2, and when a legendary creature you control enters, you may attach Hero's Blade. So drop Hero Blade, play Rograk for free. You got a 3/2, trample, haste, menace, whatever it has. Chainsaw is a great option, being 1 in a red for an equipment that equips for 3. When it enters, it deals 3 damage to target creature, and whenever 1 or more creatures dies, put a rev counter on it, and equipped creature gets +X/+0 equal to the number of rev counters on it. Fire Shrieker is a 3-drop equipment that equips for 2 that gives double strike. Wrecking Ball Arm is a 2-drop equipment that equips to legendaries for 3 or equips normally to non-legendaries for 7 and turns the equipped creature into a 7/7 that can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. So in this deck, it's a 2-drop equip for free, make that thing a 7/7 that can't be blocked by 2 or less. Cloudsteel Curin is a cool option for prolonging games, being 2 and a white for a 3/2 flying. Equipped creature has flying and you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. Reconfigure, which means you can attach it to something for 5, but since it's an equipment, Arden will go ahead and attach it for free. Bloodforged Battle Axe is one that could get seriously out of hand in this list, being a 1-drop equipment that equips for 2, equipped creature gets +2/+0. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create a token that's a copy of Bloodforged Battle Axe. Mask of Memory, a 2-drop equipment that equips for 1. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage, you may draw 2 cards and discard 1. And finally, Masterwork of Ingenuity, being a 1-drop artifact equipment that enters as a copy of another equipment. Okay, I'm back. I got these little cinnamon sugar oyster cracker things. I'm reinvigorated. Listen, I'm gonna be frank with you. We run like 1 aura and it's all that glitters. This is an equipment deck. I might have misspoke. So on top of those equipments, we've also got some ways to tutor those equipments up, including Heliod's Pilgrim, Reckless Handling, and Relic Seeker. So to pair with all these equipments and ways to tutor up equipments, we've got a ton of equipment synergy, including Ironclad Slayer being a 2 and a white 3/2 that when it enters, you can return an aura or equipment from your graveyard to your hand, so some pretty good equipment recursion, never hurt anybody. We've also got Cole the Forge Master being a white and a red 2/2. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, if it was enchanted or equipped, return it to its owner's hand, and creature tokens you control that are enchanted or equipped get +1/+1. Don't really care about the second part. First part, very good. Just bounce our commander that costs 0 back to our hand if it were to die, if it had equipments on it, sure. Rayev Master Smith being a red and a white 2/2. Whenever a creature you control that's enchanted or equipped attacks, that creature gains double strike until end of turn. Would we want that for our free commander that's getting a ton of free equipments? Armory Paladin, another banger, being a 1 red white 3/3. Trample, when you cast an aura or equipment spell, exile the top card of your library and you may play that spell until the end of your next turn. Impulse Draw for playing equipments, sure. From Final Fantasy, Furion Wild Rose Warrior is fantastic in this list. Being a 2 and a red 3/3, equipped creatures you control have haste, sure. And whenever a non-token equipment you control enters, create a token that's a copy of it, except it has this equipment's equipped cost is 2, and then sacrifice that token at the end of the upkeep. Yeah, in our deck that equipped cost is 0, but we'll take little bonuses to each equipment we play, sure, thanks. Gilgamesh Master at Arms is another Final Fantasy banger for this list, being a 4 and 2 red 6/6. When it enters or attacks, look at the top 6 of your library. You may put any number of equipment cards from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. When you put 1 or more equipments onto the battlefield this way, you may attach one of them to a samurai you control. Samurai thing, don't really care. Ton of equipments into play for free? Yeah. Iron Soul Enforcer is a 4 and a white 4/4 artifact creature. Whenever Iron Soul Enforcer or a commander you control attacks alone, return target artifact from your graveyard into play. This card really highlights why having a free commander is very good. You just drop this. Oh, I'll just go ahead and play Rograk Swing, get this huge equipment from my graveyard back into play for free. The list also runs Akiri, Fearless Voyager, being a 1, a red, and a white 3/3. Whenever you attack a player with 1 or more equipped creatures, draw a card. We will definitely take that. It's also got 1 white. You can attach an equipment to something for free. Our commander's kind of already got that, but swinging at 3 different players with equipped creatures and getting 3 pieces of card draw off this. Broodar Battlehammer is an absolute unit in this list. 2, a red, and a white for a 5/3. Each creature you control gets +2/+0 for each equipment attached to it, and you may pay 0 rather than play the equip cost of the first equipment you attach during a turn. Yeah, the second ability, whatever, our commander Arden's going to be probably doing that better. Giving a creature 2/0 for each equipment passively. And finally, for our equipment synergy, we've got Pure Steel Paladin being a 2 white 2/2. When an equipment enters under your control, draw a card, and equipments you control cost 0 to equip if you control 3 or more artifacts. Pretty much a second Arden in the deck that also just draws us a ton of cards. Now, outside of the basic game plan of playing our commanders, equipping as many equipments as we can onto Rograk, making him a huge unit, throwing him at people, using the free equip cost and the free commander to just generate a ton of value, we also run plenty of creatures that are also good to throw equipments on, because if people start hyper-focusing Rograk or permanently remove him with something like Oubliette, you might want to have some backup options. So creatures like Adelburn Steiner being a 1 and a white 2/1 lifelink that gets 1/1 for each equipment you control. That's going to be a great creature to start throwing equipments on. Even if you don't, it's going to get big. Champion of the Flame being a 1 and a red 1/1 trample that gets +2/+2 for each aura and equipment on it. Goblin Cavalier being very similar, a 1-drop 1/1 trample gets 2/0 for each equipment on it. Now, you might think Loyal Apprentice is a weird one in this category, but I don't think so. Being a 1 and a red 2/1 with haste that makes us a 1/1 Thopter with flying at the beginning of our combat if we control our commander, and since we have a free commander, Loyal Apprentice is going to be turned on pretty easily, and making 1/1 flyers, those are pretty good to throw equipments on if you're in a pinch. Valduk, Keeper of the Flame, is a 2 and a red 3/2 that makes us a 3/1 with haste at the beginning of combat on our turn for each equipment that's on it. Sure, we have to sack him at the end of turn. That's a lot of fucking power on this dude, so especially when our other commander Arden lets us throw a ton of equipments on Valduk for free. Danitha, Benalia's Hope, is another great option to throw all your equipments onto, being a 4 and a white 4/4 first strike vigilance lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, you may put an aura or equipment card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield attached to Danitha. Swiftblade Vindicator is another stat checker that's great to throw your equipments onto, being a red and a white 1/1 double strike vigilance trample. Yeah, get enough equipments on this, take some people out. And then finally, for creatures to throw your equipment on other than our commanders, we've got Danitha Capetian Paragon being a 2 and a white 2/2 first strike vigilance lifelink. Aura and equipment spells cost 1 less to cast. And just like that, you got a deck that's looking like me on a date. It's shitting, it's pooping. Here's a look at the deck's card draw, the deck's mana ramp, the deck's removal, and the deck's board interaction, along with the mana base and 3 test opening hands. If you want to take a more in-depth look at this deck, there's a link to it down below in the description. With that, let's move on to power for a pre-con deck number 2. Now, you need to hear me out on this next one, alright? Because it involves the day-night mechanic, alright? But I think I can convince you of its power. The same guy that convinced his brother that Barney's a cognito hazard. I need help. How am I going to sell you on the day-night mechanic? We don't use that part of the card. So, power for a pre-con deck number 2 comes in at $49.23 and is based around Vadrik Astral Archmage. Being a 1, a blue, and a red for a 1/2, if it's neither day nor night, it becomes day as Vadrik enters the battlefield. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost X less to cast, where X is Vadrik's power. And whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, put a 1/1 counter on Vadrik. Now, how does day and night work? Just so you can know that in case. How does day? Day turns to night if the active player casts no spells on their turn, changing the next untap step. Night to day if the active player casts 2 or more spells on their turn. So it's literally never going to turn night from day because people rarely don't cast a spell. But the fact that we can get an instant and sorcery cost reduction equal to our commander's power on a 3-drop, yeah, that's probably not extraordinarily manipulatable and extremely powerful at all. This deck's a really easy one. Step 1, play and protect our commander, okay? If they try to deal with it, we protect it with protection spells or counter spells. Easy enough. Step number 2, buff the shit out of our commander to make it massive. Step number 3, use our massive commander to reduce the cost of our instants and sorceries by a shit ton and play 10, 11, 12 drop instants and sorceries for 1, 2, 3 mana. Biggest and most important part of this deck, The buffs. How are we going to make our commander bigger? We've got Adeliz the Cinder Wind being a 1, a red, and a blue for a 2/2 flying haste whenever we cast an instant or sorcery. Wizards we control get +1/+1, and wouldn't you look at that, our commander's a wizard, so casting instants and sorceries makes instants and sorceries cost less that turn, essentially. Pretty good. Straight up combat tricks like Antagonize are really good in this deck, being 1 and a red, instant, give a creature +4/+3. Balmor, Battle Mage Captain's great, being a blue and a red for a 1/3, flying whenever we cast an instant or sorcery. Creatures we control get +1/+0 and trample. Downhill Charge provides a +X+0 equal to the number of mountains we control for 3 mana. Hero's Blade, we actually talked about in our last deck, being a 2-drop equipment that gives +3/+2 and equips 2 legendaries when you play them. Levan, Cultist of Tiamat, being a 2 and a red 1/3 that when you cast a non-creature spell, target creature gets +X+0 until end of turn, where X is that spell's mana value, becomes insane in this deck because you just play a 3-drop instant or sorcery, our commander gets +3/+0, all your instants and sorceries for the rest of the turn cost 4 less now. Oh, okay, I'll go ahead and drop this 8-drop sorcery for 4 then. Levan will go ahead and still dish out a +8/+0 though. Lunar Frenzy will give a +X/+0 for X and a red, making our commander as big as we have mana. Magic Damper is some good protection that also provides a buff, being a 1 blue instant that provides +1/+1 and hexproof until end of turn. Same thing goes for Octopus Form. Reckless Charge is a 1 red sorcery that gives +3/+0 and haste and has flashback for 2 and a red, so why not have that? Seething Anger can be absolutely disgusting in this deck, being a red for a sorcery with buyback 3. Target creature gets +3/+0 until end of turn. And if I'm not mistaken, cost reduction affects stuff like buyback, because buyback is an additional cost. So if we can reduce the cost enough, Seething Anger can just be 1 red to cast instants and sorceries over and over again. And as we've seen with cards like Adeliz or Balmor, being able to repeatedly cast spells over and over again, it's going to be pretty good. Shore Up is another form of protection that gives 1/1 and hexproof until end of turn. Stealth Mission gives 2 1/1 counters as well as unblockable until end of turn, so you could potentially smoke someone with your commander, which I think is kind of cool. Water Wings can turn a creature into a 4/4 until end of turn, so if we already have enough like counters and buffs on our commander, we can turn it into a 4/4. Even if we don't have buffs, paying 2 mana to get a 4 mana cost reduction on your instants and sorceries until end of turn. Similar to Water Wings, Zafrir Shapecraft is the same thing, turns something into a 4/3, but it also draws us a card, so bonus. Now, if you want a serious buff in this deck, Fist of Flame is disgusting. 1 and a red instant, draw a card. Until end of turn, target creature gets 1/0 and trample equal to the number of cards you drew. Yeah, I don't know, I feel like in this deck, we could probably make this be absolutely disgusting. Another basic combat trick is Invigorated Rampage, which I think is great. 1 and a red instant, choose 1, target creature gets 4/0 and trample until end of turn, or 2 target creatures get +2/+0 and trample until end of turn. In this deck, we're going to be doing the 4/0, but again, 2 mana to make your instants and sorceries cost 5+ less until end of turn. If you want a combat trick with a little built-in card draw, we've got Blazing Crescendo being a 1 and a red +3/+1 until end of turn that also lets you exile the top card and play it until the end of your next turn, so not even until the end of this turn. You get a whole rotation. Unleash Fury could absolutely win you a game in this deck, being 1 and a red to double the power of something until end of turn. So your commander's sitting at 6, 7, 8 power. It's now sitting at 16 power. Now, on top of the buff spells that also provide protection, we've got some counter spells in the deck to help protect our commander. We run Negate, we run Unsubstantiate, Dispel, Spell Pierce, and Rewind. So we've got a pretty good package for protecting our commander. So now that we have our commander in play, we have our commander big, what kind of big spells are we going to be casting on a $45 budget? Turns out, pretty good ones. I really like Explosive Welcome, being a 7 and a red instant that deals 5 damage to any target, 3 damage to another target, and adds you 3 red mana, as in this deck, casting this for 1 red is not very difficult at all. And then dishing out 8 damage for 1 red that then nets you 2 red. Nuts. Sorcerer Schemes is another great one, being 3 and a red sorcery, return target instant or sorcery from your graveyard or exiled card with flashback you own to your hand and add a red, and it has flashback for 4 and a red. Just in this deck, this is going to be a 1 red. Recast any of your other big stuff. Pretty much read this card as a copy of any other big thing in your deck to just cast a second time. Speaking of copy a big thing to cast a second time, Galvanic Iteration, being a blue and a red instant that copies the next spell you cast, and then it also has flashback, is going to be good in this deck because copying any of these spells is disgusting. We've also got Hit the Motherload, being 4 and 3 red for a sorcery. Discover 10. If the discovered card's mana value is less than 10, create a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to the difference. Again, 3 red for this? Sure. Pyretic Charge is a banger in this list, being 4 and a red sorcery. Discard your hand, draw 4 cards. Then for each card discarded this way, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Little 4-card, 5-card grip that you don't like for Vadrix in this situation. You want to pop off with Vadrix more this turn. Play a Pyretic Charge for probably 1 red. Ditch your other 4 cards. Draw 4. Give all your creatures +4/+0. Oh, look at that. Vadrix gets a +4/+0 and I have a new hand of cards. Disgust. I don't know how many times I have to say disgusting, but I'm going to keep doing it. Disgust. Drown in Dreams is a great mana sink for Vadrix, being a X, a 2, and a blue instant that has target player draw X cards or mill twice X cards. And yes, the cost reduction from Vadrix affects the X cost in this, making this one of the best win cons in the deck. For sure, have one opponent draw their whole deck out and have another opponent mill their whole deck out. Sounds good. Same as Sorcerer Schemes, think of Recoup as just a second copy of any of the big spells we have in our deck. Volcanic Visions, think of it similarly, except this will also deal the damage equal to the CMC of the thing we return to target opponent and everything they control, which is Electro Dominance is another great mana sink, being an X and 2 red instant that deals X damage to any target, and then you can cast a spell that costs X or less out of your hand for free. Are you kidding me? It might be one of the best cards in the list, honestly. Hell to Pay is just a fireball that targets creatures and gives you treasure tokens for the damage you've done in excess. How good is this one when we already have so much cost reduction? I don't know, but drowning in riches while your opponent dies isn't the worst time. We've also got Explosive Singularity being a 10-drop, deal 10. We've also got Finale of Promise being an X and 2 red sorcery. You may cast up to 1 target instant and or sorcery card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost if the value is X or less. If a spell cast this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it. If X is 10 or more, you may copy each of the spells cast. Think of this as every spell in our deck except this one's especially gross. We've got Magma Opus, which I just think is a fun card, being 6, a blue and a red instant, deals 4 damage divided, taps 2 permanents, creates a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token, and draws you 2 cards. You can also pay 2 hybrid Is It to discard it and create a treasure. Think of this as a blue and a red to do all that. I think anybody would run that. Of course, we've got Mind's Desire because it's too much fun not to run in this list. 4 and 2 blue, sorcery, shuffle your library, exile the top card, cast it for free, Storm. In this deck, casting 7, 8, 9 different cards in a turn, not hard at all. And then Mind's Desiring after that, potentially a bunch of this big shit for free. Similarly, Elemental Eruption making a 4/4 for 6 and then having Storm in this deck is essentially 2 red to do that. Game Ender, absolutely busted in this list. And then finally, we've got Jaya's Immolating Inferno being X and 2 red for a legendary sorcery that deals X damage to each of 3 targets. So if you can get this X big enough with Vadrix, you could kill every opponent and win the game. And it really is that simple. This deck's an absolute unit. It's disgusting. I saw it played a couple times in my LGS when I first started going back and was shocked at how powerful its ability was. Wasn't really interested due to the day-night thing, but if you just kind of erase that off the card and forget it exists, very good. Might I even say bustedly good. And for under $45, give her a check out with the link in the description. And if you want to take a look at this deck's card draw, mana ramp, removal, board interaction, and land base, there you go. And here's a look at 3 test hands as well to see if you'd like to build it. Let's move on to Power for a Precon deck number 3. Do you like breaking the rules of Magic a little bit? Just a little? No judgment here. Everybody does a little. Yeah, you do a little. And let's be honest, sometimes when you play Magic, you like to just a little bit before you play. No judgment again, just a little bit before you play. Yeah, just a little bit before you play. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it does. Get this sort of a Power for a Precon deck number 3 con is based around the Master Multiplied, being 4, a red and a black for a 4/3 Myriad, which means when it attacks, you get a token copy of it for each opponent you control. And you might say, Nick, why would I ever want that on my commander? Well, this commander also has the legend rule doesn't apply to creature tokens you control. So myriading on legendaries is now a thing. But even better than that, triggered abilities that cause us to sacrifice creatures or exile creature tokens we control don't do that. So we get to keep the Myriad tokens from Master. And those tokens have Myriad. You're gonna have Master Multiplied, dude. So outside of the commander itself being absolutely cracked, which it is, we have plenty of other ways to utilize not only its legend-breaking mechanic, not only its Myriad mechanic, but also its can't be sacrificed at the end of turn mechanic. This commander has so many different abilities that make the deck fun to build and also extremely powerful. Let's get into it. The first way we can utilize both the legend rule doesn't apply mechanic and the you don't have to sacrifice mechanic is token copy cards, because a lot of red cards that make token copies most of the time will have you sack those token copies at the end of turn, which we don't have to do anymore with our commander, and we could also target legendaries with, thanks to our commander. So a card like Hate Mirage being a 3 and a red sorcery, choose up to 2 target creatures you don't control. For each of those creatures, create a token that's a copy of it that you exile at the beginning of the next end step. Oh, a 4 mana, get the 2 strongest things from 2 different people and keep them? Already you should probably see how busted this is. Calamity, Galloping Inferno is 4 and 2 red, being a 4/6 haste. Whenever Calamity, Galloping Inferno attacks while saddled, choose a non-legendary creature that's saddled at this turn and create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of it. Sacrifice the token at the beginning of the next end step. Repeat this process once. So while not being able to hit legendaries, we get to keep the tokens. They don't get sacked. So we just get 2 free tokens of the 2 strongest non-legendary things we control? Sure. Echoing Assault's another great choice, being 4 and a red enchantment. Creature tokens you control have menace. Whenever you attack a player, choose target non-token creature that's attacking that player. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 1/1. The token enters tapped and attacking, and you sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Wrong. We do not. Want some more heat? How about Flame Rush Rider? 4 and a red, 3/3. When it attacks, create a token that's a copy of another target attacking creature that's tapped and attacking. Exile the token at the end of combat. Again, not us. Mirror Style Master is a 4 and 2 red, 3/3 with backup 1. Whenever this creature attacks, for each attacking modified creature you control, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of it that you exile at the beginning of the next turn. And finally, for our copy kit, we've got Redoubled Stormsinger, being 2 and a red for a 3/3 first strike. Whenever this creature attacks, for each creature token you control that entered the battlefield this turn, create a tapped and attacking copy of that token. At the beginning of your next end step, sacrifice those tokens. For 3 mana, good grief is this good. Now, outside of copying our creatures, as our commander shows us, Myriad is incredibly good because we would no longer have to sacrifice the Myriad copies. So, creatures with Myriad, gonna be good. Genasi Enforcers, being a 1 and a red 1/3 with Myriad that you can pay 1 and a red to give creatures you control named Genasi Enforcers +1/+0 until end of turn. While not extremely powerful, will quickly flood the board. You gotta really think about this. You swing with this thing once, you get 2 more tokens, okay? Next rotation comes around, you swing with 3 tokens that are each making 2 more tokens. So that's 9 tokens you have now. And then the next rotation, you have 9 tokens, each making you 2 extra tokens. So you have 18 more tokens. You're at 27 tokens. And that applies to any creature with Myriad. It's insane. How about No War Band? 5 and a red, 5/5. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each opponent who was dealt damage this turn, so this thing could realistically cost 3 mana. Menace and Myriad. Timat's Fanatics, 4 and a red, 4/3 haste, Myriad. Fearbolg Flutist, being a 4 and 2 red, 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature you don't control until end of turn. Untap it. It gains Myriad until end of turn. This one is disgusting. It doesn't keep Myriad, but you just get to get 2 token copies of the strongest thing your opponent controls, as well as swing with the original and keep the copies? Sure. But I can tell you're still not sold on the Myriad. How about Dalek Squadron? 2 and a black, 3/3, Menace, Myriad. Oh, excuse me. I saved my best one for last. How about El Tural's Survivors? 3 and a red, 0/4, Trample, Myriad. When it attacks, it gets +X+0, where X is the number of lands defending player controls. Again, if you can manage to get any of these Myriad cards firing off, you should have the game. If your commander already alone just doesn't have the game. Now, another newer mechanic that interacts great with the Master Multiplied is Mobilize. The Mobilize mechanic will have a number next to it, and when a creature with Mobilize attacks, it creates that many 1/1 attacking red warriors that you have to, say it with me, sacrifice at the end of your turn. But with our commander, we get to just keep them. So cards like Nightblade Brigade, being 2 and a black, 1/3 Death Touch Mobilize, when this creature enters Surveil 1, can easily become an army in a can for 3 mana. Shock Brigade, being a 1 and a red, 1/3 Menace, Mobilize 1. Zergo's Vanguard, being a 2 and a red, star 3, Mobilize 1. Power equal to the number of creatures we control. And the best one of all, Avenger of the Fallen, being a 2 and a black, 2/4 Death Touch that mobilizes equal to the number of creatures in our graveyard. And we run a lot of creatures. Now, the copy effects, the myriad effects, the mobilize effect, all of these act as an army in the can when they're paired with the Master Multiplied, making this deck extremely strong. Now, if you want some other creatures to copy other than the Master Multiplied with some of our copying effects, I thought running a little kit of those was a good idea, so here are some suggestions. Copying something like Perforating Artist is extremely good, being a 1 and a black and a red 3/2. Death Touch. At the beginning of your end step, if you attacked this turn, each opponent loses 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent of their choice or discards a card. If you can manage to make a copy of this thing and it sticks around, imagine having 2 of these in play, 3 of these in play, 4 of these in play with our copy effects, because guess what? The Master Multiplied lets them stick around. So if we have a card like Mirror Style Master firing off, we can keep netting copies of this and slowly create these almost group sluggish board states, which pushes each opponent into a real rock and hard place situation, which I think is great. In a similar vein, Scytheclaw Raptor is a 2 and a red 4/3 that has whenever a player casts a spell, if it's not their turn, Scytheclaw Raptor deals 4 damage to them. Again, imagine having 2, 3, 4 of these in play. How do you feel about making token copies of something like Fleshback Marauder or Plague Crafter to just force opponents to sack their boards, essentially, as we'll do it multiple times? Copying Woe Strider seems good, as we'll be netting a ton of 0/1 goats that we can then sack to scry and fix our draws. And again, having sack outlets for all these mobilized tokens, the clone copies, the myriad clone copies, I think that's useful. Mayhem Devil is actually nuts, in the same vein as Scytheclaw or Perforation Artist, being a 1, a black, and a red for a 3/3. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, this creature deals 1 damage to any target. Now, this might seem counterproductive because it's like, hey, we can't sack anything anymore. Why are we running this? Bunch of people sack stuff. Tons of land sack, tons of aristocrat decks are out there. Token decks love to sack. Go wide decks love to sack. There is a ton of decks sacking. Having multiples of these on the board, I think, is going to be pretty good in most pods. And finally, for more creatures you might want to copy, Fanatic of Mogus is a 3 and a red 4/2 that deals damage to each opponent equal to your devotion to red. So making copies of this thing over and over again, not only getting to keep your 4/2 copies thanks to the Master Multiplied, but also dealing a ton of damage with them. Now, if you're watching this specific deck and you're like, Nick, what about Encore? Encore's really good. You get to make token copies of creatures from the graveyard that get to attack that you have to exile at the end of the turn, but thanks to Master, you get to keep them. There's like no good Encore creatures. There's one, and it is in the deck, Rakshasa Debaser, being a 4 and 2 black 6/6. When it attacks, put target creature card from defending player's graveyard into play under your control, and it has Encore, meaning you can pay that and create a token for each opponent you control that you then have to sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step. In our deck, we get to keep it. This one's really good. All the other Encore stuck, but if you want to take a look at this deck's card draw, mana ramp, removal, board interaction, here you go, as well as the deck's mana base and a look at 3 test hands from the deck. There you go. Just like all the decks we're going to talk about today, if you want to take a more in-depth look at any of these, links down below. And with that, let's move on to the 4th and final power for a pre-con deck. Now, I know what you're saying. Where's my good old-fashioned Timmy deck at on this list? I got you. Our final power for a pre-con deck is based around the Pride of the Hulklade, being a 10 and a green 2/15. That's right, 15 toughness. 15 tough, little man. Put that creature on my board. If that creature doesn't stay, I don't know what to say. My jungle love. Pride of the Hulklade, 10 and a green, 2/5 that cost X less to cast, where X is the total toughness of creatures you control. Defender, pay 2 and 2 blue. Until end of turn, target creature you control gets +1/+0, gains whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw cards equal to its toughness, and can attack as though it didn't have Defender. Yeah, if Arcades has taught us anything, Defender decks are very, very good. This is a really unique spin on it, though, because instead of Defenders dealing damage equal to their toughness, which is kind of the flavor, I don't know, every other one wants to go with, this one lets you just draw a shit ton of cards for your walls connecting. Yeah, that's probably not going to be busted. So, great place to start here. Let's look at all of our defenders. These are all of our things with big toughness. Most of them have defenders. Some of them don't. Get over it. So starting things off with Aegis Turtle being a 1 blue 0/5. So in this deck, this is a 1 blue, turn it into a 1/5 with our commander, smack someone and draw 5 cards. So Axebane Guardian is a 2 and a green 0/3 defender that adds mana equal to the number of creatures with defender we control. Kalorna Coral Tyrant is a 1 and a blue 0/8. So while it doesn't have defender, still works with our commander and will draw us 8 cards. So for 2 mana? Sure, man. Why not? Fear of Failed Test being a 4 and a blue 2/7. When it deals combat damage to a player, draw that many cards. So this one will draw you 9 cards when it connects. Fog Bank being a 2-drop 0/2 defender flying, prevent all combat damage that will be dealt to it. Overgrown Zealot being a 1 and a green 0/4 that taps for mana. Moving on to Suspicious Bookcase being 2 colorless for a 0/4 defender that can make creatures unblockable. Towering Viewpoint being a 2-drop 0/4 that can give creatures flying. Walking Bulwark being a 0/3. Wall of Frost being a 0/7. Glacial Wall being a 0/7. Baloth Prime being a 4-drop 10/10 that enters with 6 stun counters on it. And whenever you sacrifice a land, create a 4/4 green beast creature token. Pay 4, sacrifice a land, you gain 4 life. This one's really good because on turn 4 you can cast it and then have your commander cost 1 green. Wall of Blossoms 0/4 draws you a card on ETB. Overgrown Battlement 0/4 that taps for mana equal to the number of walls you control. Vine Trellis being a 0/4 that taps for 1 green. Hover Barrier being a 0/6 defender flying. Cherix 2 and 2 blue 0/17. Sure, drawing 17 cards, we might be able to win a game from that, but sure, not convinced. How about a Tree of Redemption? 3 and a green 0/13 defender. Exchange your life total with this creature's toughness. Save you a bunch of the time. How about draw you 13 cards as well? Keep in mind, all the while, none of your opponent's combat is getting through to us because we have so many walls, obviously. And then rounding out our quote-unquote defender package, we've got Bedrock Tortoise being a 0/6 that gives our creatures hexproof during our turn and also allows our creatures to assign combat damage equal to their toughness rather than their power, which, yeah, you could probably guess it, will win us a game. Now, obviously, with our commander and all of this huge toughness in play, we're going to run some stuff that just interacts and cares about big toughness. So a card like Tapestry Warden is fantastic, being 3 and a green, 3/4 vigilance. Each creature you control with toughness greater than its power assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Each creature you control with toughness greater than its power station's permanence. What the f does that say? You can also have creatures like station permanence equal to their toughness. We really don't care about that part. Just another way to smack face with big defender. Tetsuko gives everything we control with power 1 or less unblockable, so walls can't be blocked. Again, will win us games. Tower Defense gives all of our creatures a +0/+5 until end of turn. Gossip's Talent is a class that costs 1 and a blue. On level 1, whenever a creature we control enters, we surveil 1. And at level 2, whenever you attack, target attacking creature with power 3 or less can't be blocked. Again, wall. And at level 3, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may exile it and return it to the battlefield. Yeah, some of our walls have ETBs that might be useful. The level 1 and level 2, super useful. Of course, the deck runs Assault Formation, being a 1 and a green enchantment. Each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness. Pay 1 green. Target creature with defender can attack as though it didn't. And 2 and a green, creatures you control get +0/+1. Everything we want in this deck, definite add. First card I added, I think, easily. Now, if you want to definitely bring home a game, we got Towering Titan, being 4 and 2 green, 0/0, that enters with X/1/1 counters on it, where X is the total toughness of other creatures you control. Sacrifice a creature with defender. All creatures gain trample until end of turn. Yeah, for $1, I thought, why not? A really cool new card from Dragons of Tarkir is Arbor Adherent, being 3 and a green, 2/4, tap it for any color, or you can tap it to add X mana of any one color, where X is the greatest toughness among creatures you control. So you could easily turn 2 or turn 3 a 0/7 wall very easily, and then have a mana dork that taps for 7 fucking mana, which is nuts in this game. Now, on top of smacking face with all these massive creatures, drawing a ton of cards, getting a ton of value, you can definitely bring home games with cards like Ominous Seas, which gets counters whenever we draw a card, and every time it hits 8 counters, we create an 8/8. In this deck, we're going to be making a ton of 8/8s with this thing. Of course, something like Psychosis Crawler, causing opponents to lose when we draw a card, is going to end the game, or something like Laboratory Maniac, causing us to win the game when our deck has 0 cards in it. Realistically, I think you're probably going to deck yourself quite a bit in this list if you're not already winning from the value. So this seems pretty good in here. And if you really want to take out an opponent, we've got Sphinx's Tutelage into Fairy's Tutelage, turning every single card draw we get into 2 pieces of mill for the opponent. So yeah, if we deck ourselves, they should be long gone by that point. And there you have it. Here's a look at the card draw, mana ramp, removal, as well as the board interaction and the land base. Here's a look at 3 test openers to see if this is a deck you'd be interested in.
Ramos the Dragon Engine. This 6-drop 4/4 flying gives itself a +1/+1 counter for each of the spell's colors when we cast a spell. We can also remove 5 +1/+1 counters from it to add 2 mana of each color to our mana pool. Activate only once per turn, obviously. This is better. I like this. 3 less mana. We don't get any like built-in cost reduction. By the way, the cost reduction's 1 and you're playing dragon, so don't act like it's like, well, that's just the best thing in the world. It's okay. It's okay. A built-in way to get our commander huge and a built-in way to add 10 mana to our mana pool. Would we want to add 10 mana to our mana pool in a dragon deck?
Take your time.
I like this dragon angle a lot. You can run the draw cards for big creature cards like Garruk's Uprising or Up the Beanstalk, along with cost reducers like Dragon Speaker Shaman, Dragon Lord Servant to play the fun multicolor dragons like Slumgar, Belladross, Murin to put counters on Ramos, to then remove 5 counters from Ramos and add a total of 10 mana. How would you like a free Cavern Horde dragon or a free Ancient Silver dragon? This is even more incredibly overpowered when we run cards like Doubling Season, Earth Crystal, double the amount of 1/1 counters Ramos is getting. Okay. Or cards like Increasing Savagery or Vision of Dominance to straight up put a ton of 1/1 counters on Ramos. Pair all of this with additional dragons that actually care about 1/1 counters like Ancient Bronze Dragon, Canopy Gargantuan, Shadrick Silverquill. Throw in and all will be 1 to turn your +1/+1 counters into damage, and boom, you've got a way cooler build in my eyes, way more casual and fun for a table, and way easier on your wallet. So all 3 of those things, pass the vibe check. Let's move on. The second most ran commander in the format is Edgar Markov. This 6-drop Mardu Vampire is a 4/4 with the ability to create a 1/1 black vampire token whenever we cast a vampire. This, much like the Ur-Dragon, still happens in the command zone thanks to Eminence. It's also got First Strike, Haste, and the ability to put a 1/1 counter on each vamp we control when it attacks. And if you're one of those dudes on Reddit who was telling me that Edgar is not only not a very competitive commander, not a spiky commander, he was also saying it's fine to play against. It's not unfun to play against. And also, cherry on top, it's not quick. Edgar Markov isn't fast. Playing a 1-drop 1/1 vampire on turn 1, getting another 1/1 vampire, doing the same thing with 2 more vampires on turn 2, having a total of 6 vampires on your board on turn 2. Hate to tell you, dude, slow. Hate to tell you, dude, slow. Dude, Reddit's energy of I'm going to just wait for him to comment something and then take every word and reverse it to the opposite and send it back is so fucking frustrating. Actually, Edgar Markov's really slow, not try hard at all, and completely fair. Eminence was actually an incredibly balanced ability. Looking ass. Now, instead of this saltine cracker of a commander that's like, oh my god, this is so fun, until you play it 3 or 4 times, and then you're like, oh, sorry guys, ugh. And then someone plays an OP deck versus you, like a CDH deck or something a little bit better than yours, and you're like, well, this sucks either way. Might I suggest to you, Alesha who smiles at death. So Alesha has an attack trigger where we can pay 2 Orzhov to return a creature with power 2 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. Stromkirk Noble. Vampire buffs, lower than a 2/2. Captivating Vampire to steal opponent's creatures, lower than a 2/2. Blood Artist to drain opponents for creatures dying, smaller than a 2/2. Legion Lieutenant to buff vamps again, lower than a 2/2. Veto to drain people when we gain life. Alendra the Dusk Rose to get big and make more threats. Drawn a Liberator of Malakir to buff our entire board. All of these have 2 or less power. And wouldn't you know it, they're some of the most incredibly power vampire cards in the game. And being able to just cheat them out of graveyard over and over and over again with your commander seems pretty powerful. So yeah, instead of just big boy vampire commander that makes you feel like you're not running small vampires even though you still are, you can just lean into it more and run Alesha, get some recursion on those small vampires, lean into the go wide aspects of a vampire deck, and plug that weenie into that vampire deck. And who doesn't like a good weenie plugged in? Moving on to Atraxa Praetor's Voice. This commander is every color but red and offers us a proliferation at the beginning of our end step, stapled onto a 4/4 flying Vigilance, Death Touch, Lifelink. Yeah, I don't think we gotta talk about it all that much, but okay. The whole meme based around Atraxa where it's like, no, I'm not running that type of Atraxa deck is pretty much just, you can throw anything that has to do with counters in an Atraxa deck and it will pop off. Very true. It's an overpowered commander. In my opinion, you're getting to run all the best colors in Magic, excluding the worst color. With a built-in guaranteed trigger of one of the most overpowered mechanics ever printed in Magic, yeah, that's gonna be gross, okay? And if you're not looking for that kind of shrug shoulders, gonna be gross commander, here's a suggestion. Now with Atraxa, I was being serious. You can literally run Feldar's Retreat to put 1/1 counters on all your creatures or make tokens, and then like a couple creatures that give themselves energy counters, and you'll be like, wait a second, these are popping off. Yeah, that's how it works. Now to match this commander's colors, I had to go with partners, and honestly, we found a perfect match here. First off, we run Ishai Ojutai Dragon Speaker, a 4-drop 1/1 Azorius commander with flying. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, put a 1/1 counter on this creature, and we pair this with the partner commander Rayhan the Last of the Abzan, a 3-drop 0/0 Golgari commander that enters with 3 1/1 counters on it, and whenever a creature we control dies or is put into the command zone, if it had 1 or more counters on it, you may put that many 1/1 counters on target creature. Oh, I like this a lot. You play a bird that just gets massive because every single spell your opponents cast turn into 1/1 counters on it, and then you run a follow-up partner that, hey, if anyone deals with that bird, all those counters are going to get moved onto something else, and then we'll play the bird again, and then we'll move the counters back. Or they can just get rid of it at the source, get rid of Rayhan, but then we're still left with the big bird that's getting bigger, and we can just replay Rayhan. So
damned if you do, damned if you don't. Again, pair this with cards like Earth Crystal or Doubling Season, and you get double counters from these. And we'll be getting a ton of 1/1 counters. Pair this with some more +1 counter interaction like Forgotten Ancient, who also just scales over the course of the game for people casting spells. Or Vulturous Zombie getting counters when creatures die. And not only do you have an incredibly strong field that only gets better if people try to deal with it, but also opens you up to playing early game evasive creatures like Herald of Secret Streams, giving all our creatures with counters unblockable, or just straight up Slitherblade, being an early game evasive creature we can throw a bunch of counters on. Love it. Then you just plug in the Proliferate sub-theme. We've got Flux Channeler turning our non-creature spells into Proliferation, and we've got Metastatic Evangel turning our non-token creatures into Proliferation. I'm not gonna lie, I actually want to build this deck. This is kind of sick. Moving on to Krenko Mob Boss, another OG classic, being able to double your goblin count by tapping the commander. Yeah, that's going to be incredibly good. Run your Goblin Kings to buff them, your Beetleback Chiefs to make more of them, pair that with Impact Tremors, and boy, do you have a consistent deck there. And also, you have a commander that people are going to kill immediately, because do you know how big of a meme this commander is in the community? If you don't, you will soon. People make jokes about Krenko constantly, and it's because I tap my commander and I get double my power on board most games. It is the most no-brain red deck on the planet. You just tap and you make a bunch of goblins. Cool. Here's a way cooler option, and one that actually ended up winning our commander budget league at the shop. Zada Hedron Grinder. Zada is a 4-drop mono red commander that is a 3/3. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only Zada, you can copy that spell for each other creature you control, and then each copy targets a different one of those creatures. Same strat here. You can even run Krenko in this deck. Run your Krenkos, run your Beetlebacks to make a bunch of goblins, alright? Play your commander, then run cards like Accelerate, which give one target creature haste and also draw you a card. And if you have, let's say, 7 goblins in play, you cast Accelerate on your Zada, you just drew 7 cards for 1 red. I mean, shit, throw a Psychosis Crawler in there at that point, because you're going to be doing this a lot in this deck. Otherworldly Outburst? Oh yeah, you're gonna board wipe. I'm gonna give target creature next time it dies, create a 3/2 Eldrazi. Oh wait, that's all my creatures, and I have like 20 goblins over here. Oh, and I also run Impact Tremors. Sorry, you're gonna take a lot of damage. How about Downhill Charge, giving +X+O equal to the number of mountains we control to target creature? I really don't have to keep going on. It won the budget league for a reason. Busted commander, absolutely egregious. For some reason, not played like super a ton. It's played a little bit, but not as much as like Krenko and shit like that. I think a Goblin Zada deck, way more entertaining, way funner for new players because you get to see some big plays going off. And I hear you saying, dude, Zada's going to get hated off the table too. It's just a Goblin deck at that point. You still run the Krenkos. You still run the Goblin Tribal. You're still just bashing face, doing Impact Tremors, Perforos shit. It's just a go hard Goblin deck. Wait for the perfect moment to drop Zada again, and then play the 1-drop that draws you 12 cards. It's not bad. Moving on to Kalia the Vast, the reason most follow-up Mardu commanders have been lackluster. They're scared to create another Kalia. This is easily my vote for the most ran commander for new players. They see this, they go, I can cheat in 3 of the coolest creature types for free when I swing. That's so cool. I want to cheat in an Avacyn Angel of Hope. I want a free Runescar Demon. I want a free Balefire Dragon. Playing on turn 3 or 4, which in theory, yeah, it's sick. It's fucking cool, okay? But you play it like 2 or 3 times and you're like, I'm kind of just like playing the same dragons, tutoring up the same demons, playing the same angels, and you quickly, much like Edgar, realize, oh, this is really, really powerful. I'm kind of doing the same aggressive thing every game. I'm winning very quickly, and other people don't seem to be having that much fun here, and there's not a lot of creativity on my own end here. And that's even if it sees play. This is just like Edgar, just like Dragon. People are gonna go, I'm just gonna hold my Path to Exile. I'm gonna hold my Counterspell. I'm gonna hold my Beast Within for that thing over there. I hate it. If you love the idea of treating into play dragons, demons, angels, big scary creatures like that in the Mardu colors, and you're looking for more of a casual build, might I suggest to you Kroxa and Kunaros. This 6-drop Mardu commander may cost 2 more mana, might cost 2 more mana, but offers a powerful 6/6 Vigilance, Menace, Lifelink stat line, as well as offering a powerful reanimation of a creature from graveyard directly into play when it enters or attacks. Meaning, all those same dragons, demons, and angels can be put into your graveyard with stuff like Ripples of Undeath or Perpetual Timepiece, and cheated into play the turn the commander comes out. Not only that, but if we have a pair of Greaves in play, we can attack with the commander and get 2 triggers off Kroxa the turn he comes out. Also being able to pair this with blink effects like Cloud Shift or Feign Death effects to have Kroxa re-enter. Not only that, but we have options for tons of demons, dragons, and angels that actually care about the graveyard. Burning Rune Demon searches for 2 cards and ditches one of them into the grave. Ancient Brass Dragon reanimates a ton of creatures from grave, and angels like Rhea Dawnbringer offer a consistent reanimation for us on our upkeep. And guess what? You run Kalia in here, so it's less suspecting for opponents. It's like, hey, oh, And Kali, equip the boot, swing, cheat this thing into play. Swing with my Kroxa as well, cheat this other big thing into play from graveyard. They're coming in from all ends, baby. And if there's one thing better than a weenie getting plugged in, it's coming from all ends. Let's move on. Up next, we've got Pantlaza. Pantlaza, Sun's favorite, is a 5-drop 4/4 Naya dinosaur commander, giving every dinosaur we cast, even Pantlaza, discover X equal to the toughness. So stuff like Gishath cheating more dinos into play, or Zakama just being a massive dino with tons of abilities, will enter and then discover more big dinos for you to cheat into play. Play the massive mana ramp cards like Dryad of Elysian Grove or Oracle of Moldiah to get multiple land drops per turn so you can rush out these massive dinosaurs. Use Pantlaza to get a little buy one, get one free action. Really fun. If I'm gonna be honest, unlike a lot of the other commanders on this list, I don't inherently have an issue with Pantlaza. I think it's a really powerful effect. You get a free dino when it comes into play. I would consider Pantlaza as about as upsetting as Maelstrom Wanderer, and I think Maelstrom Wanderer can be viewed as upsetting. I've definitely viewed it that way for a long time, but once you get a little bit of interaction in your deck, it's not that difficult to deal with. And I don't think Pantlaza is viewed as like a commander by the community that's like, overpowered, kill it immediately, busted, get that out of here. I think most people are like, cool, dinos. So if you're looking to build a Pantlaza deck, I mean, honestly, if that's the coolest looking dino commander to you, build it, my guy. But if you're looking for another suggestion that's maybe outside of the norm, a little bit more hipster, I got one. I think Samut the Driving Force is an incredible dino deck, being a 6-drop 4/5 Naya commander with first strike, vigilance, haste with start your engines, meaning your speed goes up by 1 when it enters, and the first time each turn you deal damage to an opponent, while also giving other creatures you control +X+0, where X is your speed, and reducing creatures cost by X, where X is your speed. So just by playing it, you will reduce all your dinosaurs' cost by 1, and apparently, according to Edgar, that's overpowered, according to you guys. And then you can swing with Samut and up your speed by 1 more if you connect with somebody, making all your dinos cost 2 less. And then theoretically, the turn after you play Samut, your dinosaurs could be costing 3 less mana to cast. And again, if you're running the Dryad of Elysian Groves, you're running the Oracle of Moldiahs, you've got a ton of mana. You can spam dinos into play with this thing. Not only that, a lot of trample on dinos. Getting a big +4/+0 buff from Samut, that's going to be good. You want a Pantlaza to come out for 3 mana? How about an Atali for 2 mana? I'm just saying. There's also like a ton of cool Naya dino commanders. I really don't have a problem with any of these. I think it's kind of a cool, fun, niche tribe. I don't think anybody's trying to like get super spiky with dinos most of the time. It's like, big Timmy dino deck. Oh, you board wipe? At least I got to play a bunch of dinos. So either way, it's fun. Let's move on. Sauron the Dark Lord was definitely the standout commander in his namesake set, Lord of the Rings, and it's easy to see why. This 6-drop Grixis commander is a 7/6 with Ward, sacrifice a legendary artifact or creature. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, amass Orcs 1. Whenever an army we control deals combat damage to a player, the ring tempts you. Whenever the ring tempts you, you may discard your hand and draw 4 cards. It just is the engine. All the like pieces you would need to be like, oh, once I do this, I get this trigger and then this trigger, and it's all built into the same card. So that's really cool. We get free wheel effects. We get to build up a massive army of orcs. We're doing the control style deck. Opponents play spells. We get to amass orcs. We can sit behind a ton of counter spells and removal to just keep building up a big orc to either bash face with like Rogue's Passage, fling it at somebody, run like a propaganda, Cascoon Falls, sit behind your wall of being untouchable, and then combo off after you're done controlling. It's sure, you know what I mean? That's a very viable strategy in Magic. When your commander is this busted, when you read it, the whole table's going to be like, oh, I'm completely fine losing my commander to get rid of that. You know, it maybe not the best casual commander, so let's find one. So I figured let's run the dude that tried to enslave Sauron and ended up his slave. That seems not the best lore-wise, but card-wise, I like it. Saruman the White Hand is a 4-drop Grixis commander that turns every non-creature spell we cast into an amass trigger equal to the spell's mana value. He also gives our orcs and goblins Ward 2. So he's got the same ability to create a massive army token, but it's more controllable by us. We get to determine when we're amassing these tokens for how much by the spells we play. And essentially we roll out the exact same game plan. We control, except this time when we're playing all those removal spells, those counter spells, guess what? Those are going to be non-creature spells. We're going to be amassing orcs from doing that, which makes this a little bit better in that kind of theme for me. Then we start flinging the orcs if we want to, bashing face with the orcs if we want to, playing a combo behind the wall of Pillowfort if we want to. This is a very similar deck. You don't get the wheel effect of discarding your hand and drawing 4 cards, which is a really good part of Sauron, but you get a more personal way to manipulate the army tokens, and I think it fits better into the control type playstyle anyway. So there you go. There's that. I've got a good alternative for you on this next one, okay? Next, we're going to talk about Yuriko, the Tiger's Shadow. Yuriko is a 3-mana Dimir commander with Commander Ninjutsu. That means if a creature goes unblocked, this will always cost 2. It doesn't go up with commander tax. It will just cost 2 if a creature goes unblocked. It is Very busted. It's also got, whenever a ninja you control deals combat damage to a player, reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand. Each opponent loses life equal to the card's mana value. I get it. This looks fun. Your brain goes, oh, I saw a 13 drop in my binder. Does that mean if I reveal the 13 drop, they lose Yes, that's what it means. After you play 2 games with this thing, you're gonna go, wait a second. I'm doing over 30 damage on turn like 4 or 5 most games, if not more earlier. And I get it, that's fun for a little bit. My brother built this as one of his first decks he ever built by himself. He loved it for like 2 or 3 games and then quickly realized, oh, this deck is not fun to play against. I am absolutely either getting shut down because my commander gets hated off the board immediately, or I am wiping an entire pod of commander and turning a 2-hour game where we ordered pizzas and stuff into a 20-minute game where I'm like, oh, I'll swap out decks and we'll start another one. Listen, if you're like CDH, you're Spike, you like games going quicker, you're at the tournament, you gotta go home so you can hit the hay early enough to wake up in the morning. Get some Yuriko going, my guy. But if you're playing casual commander and you're scrolling through EDH Rec and you read Yuriko and you're like, this sounds really, really fun, I'm warning you, it's a slippery slope, okay? Let me give you an alternative that I think is very good. If you want a for fun, more casual version of Yuriko, look no farther than Hidetsugu and Kairi. Hidetsugu and Kairi is a 5-drop Dimir commander that is a 5/4 with flying. When it enters, draw 3 cards and put 2 cards from your hand back on top, so a built-in little brainstorm effect, and that's going to come in handy here in a second. It's also got, when Hidetsugu and Kairi die, exile the top card of your library, target opponent loses life equal to that spell's mana value. And we're not done. If it's an instant or sorcery, you get to cast it for free. Yeah, this one's way more fun and casual. Are you kidding me? You get a big body with flying that you can start to do some really fun stuff with, because if you run clone effects, if you run a phantasmal image for 1 in a blue, you can drop it as a copy of Hidetsugu and Kairi, get the ETB trigger, set 2 big things on top of your deck, sack the clone to the legend rule, because you already control a Hidetsugu and Kairi, and then get the death trigger from your copied Hidetsugu and Kairi. Reveal your top card. Oh, I just set it to be Mnemonic Deluge. Wow, you guys are... Wow, you're going to lose 8 life, and I'm going to cast a free Demonic Deluge and then make 3 copies of any instant or sorcery in my graveyard. Yikes. You can also run Feign Death type effects to get really nasty. Imagine you did the same play we were just talking about. You play Hidetsugu, you play your clone, you get the copy of the ETB, you sack the clone, but in response to the legend rule sack, you play a Feign Death on your Hidetsugu clone, and then when it dies, it returns to the battlefield. You'll have to sack it again, but you'll get a whole nother rotation of that. And let's say on this second rotation, you hit a Rise of Eldrazi off the top. No, yeah, everybody take 11. I'm gonna go ahead and take a free extra turn and exile something. Is that cool with everybody? You don't get to play the cards for free in Yuriko. Your opponents are dead, so you don't need to play the cards in Yuriko. So if you're trying to have fun in Commander, I suggest this. Moving on to Lathril. Lathril, Blade of the Elves, is a 4-drop Golgari commander that is a 2/3 with Menace. When she does combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green Elf Warrior tokens. You can tap her and 10 elves you control. Each opponent loses 10. It's Elf Ball. I really don't have to explain it that much. You make a bunch of elves, whether that be creatures or tokens. You play some elf lords that give your tokens buffs. You play like an Allosaurus Shepherd or whatever to give your stuff on counterability. Turn your elves into dinos. You Elf Ball. You're just swinging at face. You're doing Elf Ball stuff, and your commander makes a shit ton of elves and then taps those elves to deal 10 damage. And wouldn't you know, an Elf Ball getting that last little 10 damage in is going to wipe most people out of the game. Very powerful. I don't think it's like too spiky or anything like that, but if you're looking for a more fun elf commander option, I think Tyvar the Bellicose is awesome, being a 4-drop Golgari commander. That's a 5/4 with whenever 1 or more elves you control attacks, they gain Death Touch until end of turn, making the attacking of an Elf Ball deck that it's already going to be prone to doing constantly way more likely to get through. And he's also got, each creature you control has, whenever a mana ability of this creature resolves, put a number of 1/1 counters on it equal to the amount of mana this creature produced. This ability only triggers once. Yeah, that Selvella that's tapping to add mana equal to your biggest creature, that's probably going to get huge. Oh, and then add more mana. That's actually busted. And I don't even want to think about Priest of Titania tapping to add mana equal to our elves. That's just like massive. Then throw in a Rogue's Passage and all these huge elves are just bashing face. Then you've got massive go tall elves along with a bunch of tiny elves, because it's an elf deck. You're going to be playing a bunch of elves. And guess what? They all have Death Touch. So really a damned if you do, damned if you don't here. Really like this thing. It also, its ability that gives the +1/+1 counters doesn't say elf. So if you have like a Birds of Paradise, that will still give itself counters. So still probably worth running. I'm going to be honest, I hate elves. I am not, love the movie, hate the decks. This is an elf commander that I'm actually like, I'm not going to build, I'll tell you that. Fuck no, I ain't building an elf deck still. But I'm like, interested. I think this is a cool commander. And then finally, to end off this video, we've got Kenrith the Return King, the 10th most played commander on EDH Rec. This 4 and a white 5/5 has pay a red to give your creatures trample and haste until end of turn, pay 1 and a green to put a 1/1 counter on something, pay 2 and a white to gain 5 life, pay 3 and a blue to have target player draw a card, or pay 4 and a black to reanimate a creature into play. Kenrith is really cool, and I like him a lot, and I very much wanted to build him as a reanimator deck. A lot of people play him in like CEDH and competitive, not because he is incredible, but because they're allowed to run all the colors and they have a commander that they can dump all their infinite mana into. That's a mana sink. So that's pretty much why he's used there. You can make a fun Kenrith deck. So if you're thinking about running Kenrith and you don't mind a bunch of people playing the same commander, it is a fun deck. I wouldn't necessarily label Kenrith himself as spiky or like competitive. So a bit of a cop-out answer, but I really don't have an issue with Kenrith. If you want to tap into Kenrith's mono red aggro aspects, maybe go with something like Joda. If you want to tap into his green +1/+1 counter aspects, maybe go with the Dragon Engine we already talked about. If you want to go with his life gain aspects, maybe don't go with his life gain aspects. Mavinda Student's Advocate is my suggestion for your Angel deck. So let's take this Angel strategy and add a little spice to it, shall we? So I thought, do Angels have good ETBs? Let me answer that with a few examples. We've got Righteous Valkyrie, which is a 2/4 Angel that provides a life gain equal to Angel's toughness when they ETB. It also provides a +2/+2 Anthem for our creatures if we're at 7 or more life than our starting life, which, easy. Karmic Guide, being able to reanimate a creature from our graveyard on ETB, is extremely good. And of course, Restoration Angel to provide a blink effect when it enters, which leads me to my next point perfectly. Blink spells. We can pair Mavinda's ability to let us cast instant or sorceries from our graveyard that target a creature once a turn and run blink cards like Cloud Shift, Flicker of Fate, Scroll Shift, to blink our powerful angels to reuse these powerful ETBs over and over again with Mavinda. Throw in a teleportation circle and a conjurer's closet to keep blinking every turn, and you're set. Also, Big Owl teaching angels to be angels. Kind of funny, honestly. He's like, listen, y'all ain't doing it right. When they're all like, holy, do you see the plumage on this guy? Oh. Moving on to EDH Rec's next most popular commander, Y'shtola, Knights Blessed. This 1, a white, a blue, and a black 2/4 has Vigilance. At the beginning of your end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, you draw a card. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, Y'shtola deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. I get it. I made like a fun alternative deck to her one time because she's just a very fun commander. Honestly, she's really cool. I might go to Etsy and just see if anybody's made any like altered art cards for her. Oh my god. You want Esper, you want to be controlling, you want a little built-in card engine, a little built-in way to bring home games on that commander, but maybe you just don't want to sit next to this popular girl in class. I get it. Oh yeah, it's all coming to me now. He needs a big boy commander that does big boy control things, draws him cards, has a built-in way to bring home games, but isn't so overplayed. You need Elenda and Azor. Elenda and Azor, 3 a white, a blue, and a black for a 6/6 flying ward 2. Whenever Elenda and Azor attacks, you may pay X, a white, a blue, and a black. If you do, draw X cards. At the beginning of each end step, you may pay 4 life. If you do, create a number of 1/1 black Vampire Knight creature tokens with lifelink equal to the number of cards you've drawn this turn. Hey buddy, would you like a big commander with built-in protection? Yeah. It itself is a 6/6, so you can bring home games with it. Yeah. Draw as many cards as you're willing to dump mana into and keep other mana open for control pieces. Yeah. Also, you pay 4 life and you get 1/1s equal to the amount of cards you've drawn. Not just off this thing. So if you're in the control deck, drawing 5-6 cards, not too difficult with some engines in play, especially when you got Azor. Whereas Y'shtola comes out before the control strategy goes off. You're playing Y'shtola, then you're doing control around Y'shtola. Whereas Elenda and Azor is more of a kind of follow-up to our control. We clear a path to drop our bomb commander to start flooding the board with creatures, drawing tons of cards, getting more control in our hand. If I didn't already have an Esper deck, I would probably consider building it, and I'm probably going to end up building it anyway. This next year, that's my New Year's resolution. I know it sounds like a joke, and that sounds like the worst New Year's resolution ever. I'm going to build more decks, like IRL. I just want to. I don't have a lot. I have like 2 decks that I like playing. There's a ton of stuff I've been building recently for videos that I'm like, I actually want to build that. Moving on to the 13th most popular commander on EDH Rec, we've got Joda the Unifier, being a white, a blue, a black, a red, and a green for a 5/5. Legendary creatures you control get +X/+X, where X is the number of legendary creatures you control, and whenever you cast a legendary spell from your hand, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a legendary non-land permanent with lesser mana value, and you may cast it without paying its mana cost. It's got like Legendary Cascade and then a big Legendary Anthem. It's real good. You're going to be running the Legend Tribal stuff like Sisay to grab more and more Legends from our deck, or Joyra to draw cards from casting Legends, but honestly, I got a much better replacement. How about Omnath Locus of All for you guys? Being a white, a blue, a Phyrexian black, a red, or a green for a 4/4, if you would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes black instead. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card if it has 3 or more colored mana symbols in its mana cost. If you do, add 3 mana in any combination of its colors and put it into your hand. If you don't reveal it, put it into your hand. Yeah, this dude just provides a way to build up tons of black mana with its first ability, while also letting us get more and more cards in our hand with Omnath's second ability. And that's kind of where it gets interesting because it's only our top card. And if that card is 3 or more colors, we get to put it into our hand. So cards like Brainstorm to set the top of our deck with 3+ color legends like Shanid, Sleeper's Scourge, or Kethis the Hidden Hand, which not only care about legends, but are 3 or more colors and cost 3. So we can utilize our Omnath's ability to put the legend into our hand, plus help us mana ramp it out with the 3 mana Omnath provides. This seems way more entertaining in my eyes. Plus, all your unspent mana turns into black mana, so weirdly enough, you could have like a weird package of cards like Arc Enemy Charm, Temporal Extortion to use your unspent black mana that normally would never be able to be played in a 5-color deck, which to me is really fun and interesting. So let's talk about the Wise Mothman. I honestly didn't know this commander was this popular. I even made a video like building Wendigo in a Wise Mothman deck like a while back. Didn't even realize it was the, 14th most ran commander. The Wise Mothman is 1 a black, a green, and a blue for a 3/3. Flying, whenever the Wise Mothman enters the battlefield or attacks, each player gets a rad counter, and whenever 1 or more non-land cards are milled, put a 1/1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, where X is the number of non-land cards milled this way. Super good. Provides us with a super unique Sultai mill deck that doesn't solely focus on milling ourselves, but everybody, so definitely a nice change of pace for the colors. My suggestion for a Sultai commander mill alternative is a pair of partner commanders, being Kaidel, Chosen of Krufix, and Ikra Shadiki, the Usurper. Kaidel, Chosen of Krufix is 2 a green and a blue for a 2/3. You can tap her, add 1 waste to your mana pool for each card you've drawn this turn. And our partner in this deck is Ikra Shadiki, the Usurper, being 3 a black and a green for a 3/7. Menace, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. I get it, this one seems super weird, but once I started really looking into if it could work, I think this is actually a super promising build. I don't know why all these partner Sultai commanders are really speaking to me in the last few videos, but I like them. Kaidel's ability to add mana equal to the amount of cards we're drawing in a turn, paired with some draw engines like Kami of the Crescent Moon, or cards like Brainstorm, can produce a good amount of mana on our turn that we could then use to play card draw spells like Mind Spring to draw even more cards, untap Kaidel with creatures like Kelpie Guide to add even more mana, to play mill cards like Maddening Cacophony. Now, Ikra is where this deck becomes super interesting though, as we can run big butt creatures like Chancellor of the Spires or Imperious Mindbreaker, both of which love to mill while having large toughness, and of course we're going to run those. But the cherry on top here is Phoenix, God of Deception, turning all of our large toughness creatures into more mill by tapping to mill for their toughness. You're bashing with big butts, you're milling a ton of people, you have a little secret commander Phoenix in here, which I think is cool. Sue me, I think it's a cool build. Who doesn't like 3 commanders? Throw a freaking a companion in here if you want. Go crazy. Moving on to Miram. We gotta talk about him. I just don't like dragons, man. Miram Sentinel Worm, 3 a green, a red, and a blue for a 6/6 flying ward 2. Whenever another non-token dragon enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of it, except the token isn't legendary if that dragon is legendary. One of those commanders. Don't have to explain why this is good. And it will be fun for the first 2 or 3 games until you're like, my friends don't like versing me with this. So why don't you just play Riku of 2 Reflections instead? It's way more fun. It's way more earned. Riku of 2 Reflections is 2 a green, a red, and a blue for a 2/2. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may pay a red and a blue. If you do, copy that spell, you may choose new targets, and whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay a green and a blue. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Yeah, not only can you copy dragons just like Miram does, but those dragons' approaches, yeah, you can start copying those now and get real spicy with it. Sarkhan's Triumph, yeah, copy that now and tutor out 2 dragons. Just dragon copy plus spell copy plus earned a little bit more plus way more fun to build around, in my opinion. So there you go. Every man has 2 Rikus inside of him. Wait. You know me. If you're new to the video, maybe you don't know me as well. There's always one of these builds. There's always one of the cards. There's always one of the deck ideas. There's always one of the commanders that stands out in my list that is my personal favorite. I think this next deck idea absolutely slaps. I have seen nothing online of anyone doing this, so buckle up. The next most popular commander on EDH Rec is Nekasar the Mind Razor, being 2, a blue, a black, and a red for a 2/4. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Nekasar deals 1 damage to that player. The wheel deck. You're running Psychosis Crawler type creatures to deal damage when people draw. You're running extra draw type cards like Howling Mine, so everyone's drawing more cards, so they're taking more damage. It's a good deck. Group slug, but way more efficient. And I've got a weird suggestion. I need you to listen to the full idea before judging. Thank you. How about you try Mishra Eminent One instead? Mishra has 2, a blue, a black, and a red for a 5/4. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of target non-creature artifact you control, except its name is Mishra's War Form. It's a 4/4 construct artifact creature in addition to its other types. It gains haste, and you sacrifice it at the end of turn. And I hear you. This is an artifact commander, Nick. What are you talking about? I want a Grixis wheel deck. Well, let me tell you what I'm talking about, all right? Because when you're running cards like Horn of Greed, Howling Mine, Teferi's Puzzle Box, to name a few, making 4/4 copies of those on your side, while not useful because you have to sack them at the end of turn in those specific card cases, is also just another way to have big bodies bashing opponents, which adds a nice little spice to the wheel deck. But here's where it really comes in clutch. Because when we're talking about artifacts like Temple Bell, Sensei's Divoting Top, Jet Medallion, those can actively be used on your turn as a second copy of that card once you get a copy of them that's a 4/4 from Mishra, which I think becomes very, very scary because I can just rattle off some real good ones. Wishclaw Talisman, you want a second copy of that so you can tutor for 2 things this turn? How about a Mind Crank? Every time someone takes damage, they mill that much twice. Oh, wouldn't you look at that? I have a 4/4 copy of Mind Crank too. Huh. Honestly, something as weird as like Aether Siphon could be good. 1 and 2 blue artifact. Start your engines, pay 2, tap it, draw a card, and then once you're at max speed, whenever you draw a card, each opponent mills 2 cards. Yeah, people are just wheeling through their decks anyway. You could just throw this in there, get a token copy of it each turn with Mishra, and then just like double up on this effect on turns that you want to be drawing a bunch of cards. I think it's a sweet deck, actually. Very cool take on a wheel build. Any other suggestions that you guys come across for any of these builds, but specifically this one because I really like this one, let me know in the comments. Moving on. Okay, next we're going to talk about Ishin, 2 Heavens is 1. I've done a unique build about this guy, and that was pretty difficult, but we figured it out. It's like a pillow fort, weird build. This dude's very straightforward, okay? So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is my weakest suggestion of the list. Ishin is a red, a white, and a black for a 3/4. If a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Yeah, Grave Titan twice, King. Do what you got to do. Cranko twice, King. Like I said, this guy's a little milquetoast in my eyes. He's just like, do you like attacking? Yeah. That's it. So instead of like a dead on the money suggestion for like an alternative here, because this one's so straightforward, pick any Mardu aggro commander, honestly. They're all kind of doing similar stuff. I thought I'd recommend just a cool commander that I think needs to see more play. Vihan Goldwaker, baby. A red, a white, and a black for a 3/3. Other outlaws you control have vigilance and haste. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may have treasures you control become 3/3 colorless assassin artifact creatures in addition to their other types until end of turn. This is way cooler. Run Professional Facebreaker to start making tokens. Now you got that Facebreaker plus all the treasure tokens that are 3/3 assassin treasures with vigilance and haste, and cards like Brass's Bounty become an insane power spike on our side of the board because they will all become 3/3s. You could also just throw a bunch of attack trigger treasure creators like Captain Lannery and then just put Ishin in the deck anyway if you're really hell-bent on the whole Ishin thing. Again, weakest suggestion in the list, I'm not gonna lie. Let's move on. As a community service, I felt it needed to suggest a more fun, casual alternative to Miss Bumbleflower because she's a monster and she must go. Miss Bumbleflower is 1, a green, a white, and a blue for a 1/5 vigilance. Whenever you cast a spell, target opponent draws a card, put a 1/1 counter on target creature, it gains flying until end of turn. If this is the second time this ability is resolved this turn, you draw 2 cards. Oh, so you're saying just a shit ton of upside for me to a ridiculous degree, and then one card draw for somebody in exchange? Yeah, the only real trade-off with this card is the fact that if you're a grown man running it, you have to say Miss Bumbleflower every time you play your commander. So I guess that's fair. I get it. You're looking for a group huggy, oh, I'm so cute and helping the table strategy, oh, did I win the game type commander, and I've got it for you. I recommend Cross Defense Contractor, because my god, this dude's nuts. For 1, a green, a white, and a blue, we get a 2/4. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a shield counter on target creature an opponent controls. Whenever you put one or more counters on a creature you don't control, tap that creature, goad it, it gains trample until your next turn. Start throwing counters on all your opponent's stuff. With stuff like Rishkar, Sheltering Ancients, or Generous Patron to goad specific threats on the opponent's boards, or just goad everything with cards like Skyboon Evangelist, Requisition Raid, or Collective Effort to not only buff a full opponent's board, but also goad it as well, and give it trample with Cross. Then use some Propaganda, Nils, Ghostly Prison type effects to add to the whole deck's don't swing at me aspect. Of course, some proliferation cards like Metastatic Evangel or Flux Channeler to keep putting counters on previously goaded creatures to keep them goaded. And I love this. This one, I think I'm actually going to build. This one, this specific deck, and then from the last series of these videos, Silas and Kodama of the East Tree. I'm going to build both of these. I think these decks both seem incredibly fun. Also just a good deck to like introduce politics to the table without being super overbearing. Because you're like protecting their stuff, you're giving them buffs, you're helping them out, but you're also like, hey man, remember when I did that? Not cool for doing this. I said it in the last video, if you're not a very social player, you don't introduce politics a lot, I think it's pretty useful to have one of these decks in your list. This one's going to be mine. Moving on to Ulalek Fused Monstrosity. I'm going to be honest, this one was really tough as well. A 5 waste or 5 Wooburg or whatever combination of the two, 2/5 with Devoid that has whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, you may pay 2 waste. If you do, copy all spells you control and copy all other activated and triggered abilities you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Pretty niche. If you're looking for a big Eldrazi 5-color deck, it's pretty much this or the other one that came in the precon, Azlask, but again, that's not much of an answer for the case of this video, and the only other one that I found was Joda. Joda Archmage Eternal, which turns all of your spells you cast into Wooburg to cast them. So instead of paying 12 mana for that Eldrazi, 9 mana for that Eldrazi, double digits for that Eldrazi, you'll spend 5 mana now to cast it instead. Yeah, if you're looking for a 5-color Eldrazi deck and you're not wanting to run either of those 2 Eldrazi's, that's the best suggestion I've got here. All the other ones, you could make points for why they would be good, for why they might work, for why they might do this. At the end of the day, you're still running a deck packed full of double-digit mana cost, so Joda, there's your answer. All right, boys, I'm finishing things off with the 20th most popular commander on EDH Rec, which is Balin the Haymaker. Balin is a red, a green, and a white for a 4/3. Tap 2 untapped creature. Tap 2 untapped tokens you control to add 1 mana of any color, tap 3 untapped tokens you control to draw a card, or tap 4 untapped tokens to put 3/1/1 counters on Balin the Haymaker and give it trample until end of turn. So, you want to make a bunch of tokens? You want to translate those tokens into power and value, and you want to be maybe not as straightforward as this one? A commander that I've been wanting to build for a second and I can't stop thinking about, which also makes a fantastic alternative to Balin, is Shalai and Halar, being 1, a red, a green, and a white for a 3/3 flying vigilance. Whenever 1 or more 1/1 counters are put on a creature you control, Shalai and Halar deals that much damage to target opponent. Now, sure, you could put a ton of 1/1 counters on something like Genesis Hydra and start dealing a ton of damage with this thing, which you should definitely still do in this deck. But you could also just make a ton of tokens with something like Avenger of Zendikar, then every time a land enters, give all those plants 1/1 counters with Avenger of Zendikar, and that's a ton of pings with Shalai. Or run token cards like Grand Crescendo and pair it with something like Feldar's Retreat to start putting board-wide 1/1 counters on our board, which will cause Shalai and Halar to do some serious damage. It also does this damage to everybody, so if you're able to give Shalai and Halar lifelink with something like Basilisk Collar, you'll be gaining a ton of life as well as dealing tons of significant damage. And I think you've got like a seriously good Naya token list that can go wide, never takes its foot off the pedal. Opponents are going to be taking damage from combat, from direct damage from your opponent, nonstop. You can even throw in an Impact Tremors to make it a 3-way onslaught, and no one's making it out of that.
Raise Velgar of the First Brood. Now this mono blue commander is 4 and a blue for a 5/5 flying vigilance ward 2. We love some built-in protection. When Raves Velgar enters the battlefield, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn and can't be blocked this turn. Now, what are we normally gonna do with this deck? You're normally gonna run some like when it deals combat damage stuff. You're gonna make it unblockable with your Raves Velg. You're gonna run some control pieces, control the board while also making some of your stuff evasive and smacking face with it. Or you can go straight Spellslinger, but without red. Kind of missing a lot there. Here's where my head's at, okay? Whenever anything says non-creature, I immediately think of enchantments and artifacts. With this one being mono blue, I figured artifacts seem pretty good. And then my follow-up thought to that was, I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that scales in power with how many artifacts you control. Yeah, there is, and that's where we're gonna start, okay? So first piece of this deck, stuff that scales with artifacts in play, okay? We're gonna piece this together piece by piece. Stick with me. Stick with me here, you're gonna love this. Broodstar is 8 and 2 blue for a star affinity for artifacts. Flying, whose power and toughness are equal to the number of artifacts we control. Brotherhood Vertibird is a 3-drop star 4 flying, whose power is equal to the number of artifacts we control, and cruise for 2. Darksteel Juggernaut is a 5-drop star indestructible, whose power and toughness are equal to the number of artifacts we control, who has to attack each turn if able. Filgry Attendant is a 2 and 2 blue star 3 flying, whose power is equal to the number of artifacts. Master of Ethereum, again, power equal to artifacts, gives other artifacts +1/+1. Shambling Suit, power equal to the number of artifacts. One of the more pricey cards, if you're willing to throw down for this deck, is Simulacrum Synthesizer, being a 2 and a blue that scries 2 on ETB, and whenever you play another artifact with value 3 or greater, you make a 0/0 that gets 1/1 for each artifact you control. Urza makes that same 0/0 when it ETBs. You can also tap an artifact to add a blue, or pay 5 and spin the lottery. And then finally, Urza's Command, 2 and 2 blue, choose 2. Creatures you don't control get -2/-0 until end of turn. Create a tapped Power Stone token. Create a 0/0 that scales, or scry 1, draw a card. The first piece of the puzzles in... we did a puddle. So step 1's done and over with. Now we actually need a bunch of artifacts in play to make these creatures power scale. The first way we're going to do this in this deck is running a bunch of 0-drop artifacts, because not only are they going to put more artifacts in play to make our creatures bigger, just casting it is going to trigger our commander, and then we can use our commander, target one of our things that scales with the number of artifacts in play to make it unblockable this turn, bash face for pretty good amount of damage. So we run Astral Cornucopia, which could potentially just be a 3-drop, 6-drop, 9-drop mana rock, or we could just play it for 0. Claws of Gix is a 0-drop artifact, pay 1, sack a permanent, gain 1. Dark Sphere is a 0-drop artifact that you can sacrifice to prevent half the damage done by a source. Delif's Cone is a 0-drop artifact that you can sacrifice. If target creature you control attacks and is not blocked, you may choose to gain its power and life. Of course, we've got Urza's Bauble, Mishra's Bauble, Spellbook giving us no hand size, Tormod's Crypt being able to exile graveyards, Welding Jar being able to sacrifice to regenerate an artifact. That is a great way because it also, as I said, interacts with the commander. The second way that we're going to go wide with artifacts, obviously, you saw it coming, clue, food, treasure tokens. So a removal spell like Depths of Desire, being a 2 and a blue instant that returns target creature to its owner's hand and then makes us a treasure token, is just removal that helps us go wide with artifacts. Hornswoggle, love that name, is 2 and a blue that counters target creature spell, and then you make a treasure. Malcolm makes you a treasure whenever he deals combat damage. Nuka-Cola Vending Machine makes food tokens. Piper Wright makes clue tokens. Prosperous Thief makes treasure tokens. Spell Swindle makes treasure tokens. Tamio's Journal makes clue tokens. The Mechanist makes clue tokens. Turn into a pumpkin again is some removal that gives us a food token. And then also I found Mechan Assembler from Edge of Eternity that's pretty solid in this deck, being 4 and a blue, 4/4. Whenever another artifact you control enters, you create a 2/2 robot artifact. Yeah, so more artifacts when you play artifacts? Sure. On top of this, of course, we run the artifact lands. We've got Darksteel Citadel, Seed of the Synod, Treasure Vault. On top of this already really solid game plan, we run Cyberdrive Awakener to animate all of our treasure, clue, or food tokens. Tatsune Animator to do the same, and as we talked about, Simulacrum Synthesizer is an absolute unit in this deck, and Urza Lord High Artificer is always an absolute unit. If you want to take a look at the deck's card draw, mana ramp, removal, and board interaction, there you go, as well as the new and improved land base that I hope you like a little bit more, and 3 test hands to see if this is something you'd be interested in. Again, we got full deck list down in the description. With that, let's move on to fun casual commander deck idea number 2. So our second fun casual deck idea revolves around Olivia Mobilized for War, who is 1, a black, and a red for a 3/3 flying. Whenever another creature enters under our control, we may discard a card. If you do, put a 1/1 counter on that creature. It gains haste until end of turn and becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. This deck was super fun to make because along the way I realized how many different things interact with Olivia in super cracked ways, including the brand new Lorwyn Eclipsed mechanic, Blight, which is the main point of this list. If you don't know what Blight is, it's a brand new mechanic being introduced in Lorwyn Eclipse, and you can put a number of -1/-1 counters on your own creatures, normally for some sort of trade-off for a positive effect. With Olivia, these things are gonna still blight when they ETB and still give us their powerful bonuses and powerful effects they have, but Olivia will just add a 1/1 counter, which will get rid of one of the -1/-1 counters, making a lot of these blight cards way more potent. So that's obviously where we're going to start in this deck. We've got Blighted Blackthorn being a 4 and a black 3/7. Whenever this creature enters or attacks, you may blight 2. If you do, you draw a card and lose 1 life. Bog Sliver Embrace is a 1 and a black sorcery that as an additional cost, we can blight 1, exile target creature. Burning Curiosity is 2 and a red for a sorcery that you can blight 1 as an additional cost. You exile the top 2 and you can cast them until the end of your next turn. Champion of the Weird is 3 and a black for a 5/5. As an additional cost to cast this spell, behold a goblin and exile it. Exile a goblin you control from play or your hand. A lot of this stuff with blight is a goblin, so I feel like you can pull this off a lot of the time. Pay 1 life, blight 2, target opponent blights 2. Activate only as a sorcery. When this creature leaves the battlefield, return the exiled cards to their owner's hands. Chaos Spewer is 2 and a hybrid Rakdos for a 5/4. When it enters the battlefield, you may pay 2. If you don't, blight 2. How about a Cinder Strike? 1 red, sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, blight 1. Cinder Strike does 2, but if you blighted it, it deals 4. Dawnhand Dissident is a banger that's going in my Taval deck. Also great in here. 1 black, 1/2, tap it, blight 1, surveil 1. Tap it, blight 2, exile target card from a graveyard. During your turn, you may cast creature spells from among the exiled cards by removing 3 counters from among creatures you control. Oh, wouldn't you know, we have a ton of counters to remove. Douse and Dawnglow is 4 and a black to return something from your graveyard into play, and then blight 2. Dream Caesar, 3 and a black for a 3/2 flying. When this creature enters, you may blight 1. If you do, each opponent discards a card. Gristle Glutton, 1 and a red, 1/3, tap it, blight 1, discard a card, draw a card. Grub Storied Matriarch is 2 and a black for a 2/1 menace. When this creature enters or transforms into Grub Storied Matriarch, return up to 1 goblin card from your graveyard to your hand. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay a red to transform Grub into Grub Notorious Ante. Being a 2 and a 1 menace, whenever Grub attacks, you may blight 1. If you do, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of the blighted creature, except it has, at the beginning of your end step, sacrifice this token. You can pay 1 black at the beginning of your first main phase to transform it back. Or maybe Gut Splitter Gang, being a 3 and a black 6/6. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may blight 2. If you don't, you lose 3 life. Requiem Hex being 1 black for an instant, and as an additional cost, you may blight 1, destroy target creature with mana value 2 or less. If the spell's additional cost was paid, you gain 2 life. Scuzzback Scrounger, it's what I used to be called in high school. 1 and a red, 3/2. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may blight 1 and make a treasure token. Shadow Urchin is 2 and a hybrid Rakdos for a 3/4. When this creature attacks, blight 1. Whenever a creature you control with 1 or more counters on it dies, exile that many cards from the top of your library. Until your next end step, you may play those cards. What about the Sinister Gnarlback? 2 and a black, 0/4. At the beginning of your end step, draw a card and blight 1. This one's a banger. Soul Immolation, also very good. 3 and 2 red as an additional cost to cast this spell. Blight X. X can't be greater than the toughness among creatures you control. Soul Immolation deals X damage to each opponent and each creature they control. Just some good board work. Rounding things off, we've got Sour Bread Ante, being a 2 and 2 red 4/3. When it enters the battlefield, blight 2, make 2 1/1 red goblins. And finally, Sting Slinger, being 2 and a red 3/3. Pay 1 and a red, tap it, blight 1. This creature does 2 damage to each opponent. So Olivia interacts really well with Blight, but there is a cost to doing her ability. You have to discard a card, so we do have some discard interaction and recursion. As far as the discard interaction is concerned, we've got Archfiend of Ifnir being a 3 and 2 black 5/4. Whenever you cycle or discard something, put a -1/-1 on each creature your opponent controls. Yeah, pretty good. Of course, we got Bone Miser, 4 and a black 4/4. Whenever you discard a creature, make a 2/2, discard a land, add 2 black. Whenever you discard a non-creature non-land, draw a card. We also run recent standard staple Monument of Endurance, being a 3-drop artifact. Whenever you discard a card, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Draw a card, make a treasure, each opponent loses 3. And as far as repeatable recursion is concerned, we run Oversold Cemetery, being a 1 and a black enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 4 or more creature cards in your graveyard, you may return target creature card from your graveyard into your hand. Being a 3 and 2 black enchantment, you choose Khans or Dragons when it enters. If you chose Khans, at the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. And if you chose Dragons, each opponent loses 2 and you gain 2. We're picking Khans here. And then we also run Phyrexian Reclamation, being a 1 black enchantment, pay 1 and a black, pay 2 life, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Oh, we're not even close to done, by the way. The amount of stuff that Olivia interacts with is insane. So let's move on to the Persist section of the deck, because entering with a 1/1 counter, if you could imagine it, is very good for a creature with Persist, because you can infinitely sack it and let it come back into play for as many cards in your hand as you're willing to discard. So we've got Lesser Manticore, being a 2-drop, 2/2 as an additional cost to cast this spell. Discard a card, pay 4, it deals 1 damage to target creature, persist. Murderous Redcat, being a 2 and 2 hybrid Rakdos 2/2 with persist that when it ETBs deals damage equal to its power to any target. Persistent Constrictor, being a 4 and a black 5/3 at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, they lose 1 life and you put a 1/1 counter on up to 1 target creature they control. And it's also got persist. Puppeteer Click, being 3 and 2 black for a 3/2 persist. Flying, when this creature enters the battlefield, put target creature card from from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste, and you exile it at the next end step. And finally, Putrid Goblin, just a bear with persist. So something with persist, when it dies, if it didn't have a -1/-1 counter on it, it comes back into play with a -1/-1 counter on it. But thanks to Olivia, it'll enter with a 1/1 counter on it as well, which will cancel each other out, and you can sack it to persist it again, and keep doing that for as many times as you're willing to discard a card for Olivia's trigger. So some sack outlets are going to be pretty good in here too. We got Altar of Dementia to turn creatures into mill, Ashnod's Altar turning creatures into mana, Goblin Bombardment turning creatures into damage, and Woe Strider turning creatures into scrying.
Moving on to the vampire package in the deck. Now this isn't a big package. I only run 3 vampires. I was a big critic on which vampires I let into my Olivia list.
The first one being Captivating Vampire, being 1 and 2 black for a 2/2. Other vampire creatures you control get +1/+1. Tap 5 untapped vampires you control to gain control of target creature and have it become a vampire. Because if you'll remember, another part of Olivia's ability, on top of the 1,000 other things it does, is turns that creature that entered into a vampire. So this will not be hard to trigger at all. We've also got Cordial Vampire, being a 2 black 1/1 that turns every vampire dying into a 1/1 counter on all vampires. And we've also got Olivia's Wrath that gives a -X/-X equal to the number of vampires to all non-vampires. Pretty stacked. We also run a few Madness cards. I'm not really going to go over these ones because they're mainly a part of the removal and card draw package of the deck. But Madness is a mechanic where when a card with Madness is discarded, you can normally cast it for a much cheaper cost. So... And then finally, I didn't know where to put it. All will be 1. Yeah, that's in the list. It's absolutely correct. Whenever counters go on something, you deal 1 damage equal to the number of counters that were placed on that thing. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, if something with Blight enters, it still gets the -1/-1 counters, and it still gets the 1/1 counter from Olivia. They just cancel each other out. So you will still be pinging for tons of damage in this list. But yeah, if you want to take a look at the full list, you can check out the description down below. But here you go if you want to take a look at the card draw, mana ramp, removal, and board interaction, as well as the new and improved mana bases I hope you guys liked, and 3 opening test hands to see if this is something you would be interested in. Again, links down below to all the deck lists, and let's move on to the third and final fun casual deck idea of the video. So the third and final fun casual commander deck idea is a bit of a work in progress, I'm going to be honest, so I'm going to need a little bit of community help here. If you've got any suggestions for this list, let me know. It's based around Svella Ice Shaper. Svella is 1 a red and a green for a 2/4. Pay 3 and tap it. Create a colorless snow artifact token named Icy Manalith. With tap, add 1 mana of any color. Pay 6 a green and a red. Tap it. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may cast a spell from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. 90% of the time with this card, you're just running a Timmy deck. You're playing giant creatures for free, or you're just making a bunch of manaliths and hard casting them for free. Whichever way you want to go about it, you're playing giant creatures in this deck earlier than they should be played. Not if I'm involved, buddy. The first place my brain went was, what if we did a Spellslinger deck? I thought of all of the amazing Spellslinger cards that are like 6, 7, 8, 9 plus mana that really don't get played that often because they cost so much. In Svella, you could actually get away with playing those and then pop the hell off. So let me explain. Let me give you the rundown here. This is a casual for fun deck. The most out of all 3 of these for sure, alright? I understand it costs 8 mana to activate that ability. Commander games go long in cash. I don't know what to tell you. Let me just try to sell you on this, alright? You play Svella, the next turn you play a land, you make one of your icy things. You can use Svella way quicker than you think you can, and then start hitting some cool shit like Sphinx Bone Wand. 7 colorless for an artifact. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may put a charge counter on Sphinx's Bone Wand. If you do, Sphinx's Bone Wand deals damage equal to the number of charge counters on it to target creature or player. Stick with me, I've got spells to interact with this stuff. This is just where I'm starting. How about Rite of the Dragon Caller? 4 and 2 red, enchantment, all of our instants and sorceries become 5/5 red dragons with flying? Sure. How about Keeper of Secrets, which might be the best card in this deck? 5 and a red, 6/4, first strike, haste. When you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, Keeper of Secrets deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to target opponent. Yeah, our commander's going to be casting off the top of our library, and you'll come to find out, if you haven't already, there's a lot of big spells in this deck. How about Inferno Project? 6 and a red, 0/0 trample that enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it, where X is the total mana value of instants and sorceries in your graveyard. Similarly, Erratic Cyclops is 3 and a red for a 0/8 trample that gets +X/+O whenever you play a spell equal to that spell's mana value. How about Arcane Bombardment? 4 and 2 red enchantment. When you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, exile an instant or sorcery card at random from your graveyard. Then copy each card exiled with Arcane Bombardment. You may cast any number of the
copies without paying their mana cost. I'm still not selling ya? Naya Soul Beast, 6 and 2 green, 0/0 trample. When you cast it, each player reveals the top card of their library and it enters with X11 counters equal to the total CMC. Nahiri's Wrath, 2 in a red, sorcery, discard X cards. It deals X damage to X different creatures or planeswalkers where X is the total converted mana cost of the discarded cards. Even something like Levan, Cultist of Timeout is insane, being 2 in a red, 1/3. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, target creature gets +X/+O, where X is that spell's mana value. We've got Azuri's Predation, 5 and 3 green for a sorcery. For each creature your opponents control, create a 4/4 green Phyrexian Beast creature token. Each of those creatures fights a different one of those creatures. How about Volcanic Vision, 5 and 2 red for a sorcery. Return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. Volcanic Visions deals damage equal to that card's CMC to each creature your opponents control. Gross. How about Mizzix's Mastery, 3 in a red sorcery. Exile target card that's an instant or sorcery from your graveyard. For each card exiled this way, you may cast a copy of it without paying its mana cost. Exile Mizzix's Mastery, or it has Overload for 5 and 3 red, which could be disgusting in this deck. How about a Brass's Bounty to make a treasure token for each land we control? The real gravy for this deck is you are cheating into play massive instant and sorcery value engines to then just start spell slinging off and killing opponents with these massive, super strong value engines. As you can see, all of our removal are instants and sorceries, so they will interact with all of those engines. A big chunk of our ramp are instants and sorceries, and same goes for our card draw and board interaction. A few additional powerhouse cards I want to talk about in this list though. Raiding Schemes is very good in here, being 3, a red and a green for an enchantment. Each non-creature spell in your hand has Conspire, which means if you tap 2 untapped creatures that share a color with it, you can copy that spell. How many creatures are we running in here? We're running 12 creatures. Most of them are red. A huge chunk of our spells that we're playing are red. I feel like this is good. Maybe it's not. Let me know what you guys think of that down below. I think Double Visions is insane, being 3 and 2 red. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery each turn, you may copy that spell. And wouldn't you look at that, Sfella says cast without paying its mana cost. Very nice. As well as some ways to double Sfella's ability, because I feel like that's where this gets really nice, because paying 8 to cheat like a 6 or 7 drop into play is nice. You're almost losing out on mana some of the times. It's nice to be able to get that from your top 4. But if you're able to dump like 1 or 2 extra mana into that ability and then get another activation of it, that's when the value really starts hitting. So we've got stuff like Battle Mage's Bracers to double it, Lithoform Engine, Peter Parker's Camera, Return the Favor, or Rings of Brighthearth. All of which will help us double either one of Sfela's abilities, which is going to be really nice. I told you it was a weird one, but there you go. If you liked any of these 3 decks and you are considering building them, let me know down in the comments. If you really want to show your support, you can go ahead and leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're a real OG, you could go ahead and become a $1 member over on the Patreon or YouTube members. I don't know. I'm not making you. I'm not forcing your hand or nothing. Let me know what you would add to any of these decks, which one was your favorite, and I'll see you guys on Sunday. Peace.